Hello, everyone. It is time for revolutionary change. I'm Jen Perelman.
I'm Peter Hager, and I just got a text message from a candidate letting me know that they're gay. I didn't know that that was such an important part of why I should vote for
I
somebody.
mean, are they having a party about it? Like, is there if there's a coming out party, I'm all for it.
I would just say to whoever is the marketing strategist for that particular candidate, you're doing it wrong if you think that's how you're going to get people to support you.
Yeah, you're going to need a little bit more than that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but welcome everybody. If you're new here, please subscribe. There are a lot of ways you can support. We have a lot to talk about. Do we
have a lot to talk about, Jen?
I feel like every day I watch the end of the world happen. Like the gravity of information every day feels like I'm watching the end of the world, and I can't think what could be worse than what I saw today. And then I see some sick shit with some guy slamming an 18-month-old into the concrete at an airport. And I never thought I'd see something like that in my whole life. Like ever.
And it appears that it wasn't caught by a person that was filming them. It was caught by a security camera in the facility. And so I think that
you can tell it's the security camera. It's up in the sky. It's the eye in the sky. But at first when I saw it, I thought it was a spoof and that it was not a real kid. Like that it was just somebody mocking, and then as soon as I realized that was real, I also could not believe that what I'm watching. And he just hangs out and then sits down like nothing happened.
I don't know. You see, the way that guy acted when he sat down, I wasn't entirely sure if he sat down because he was just waiting to be arrested.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I assumed was the reason why he did that. But
and then you had just written back like, okay, so Peter and I communicate throughout the day on two different platforms, really. So we'll be going back and forth on Instagram and in text. And sometimes I'll get two different conversations in my head mixed up. So Peter responds, yeah, that guy should be cold cocked. And I'm thinking, God, that's so tame for you. I can't believe you would say that. And then I realized you weren't talking about the same guy.
No, talking about a different guy, talking about some.
Right. That literally just needed to be cold cocked. I agree.
I think that was an older video clip that was sent over to me pertaining to the one about the Israel lobby and their control.
Yeah.
The guy
he should be punched in the face. That one was the one who threw her phone.
No, the guy who assaulted, I can't even attempted murder, I guess, and that baby's probably going to die. That person needs to be executed, like pure and simple. That person is beyond saving.
The guy at the airport.
Yeah, the guy at the airport. Oh, he needs to be executed. Like pure and simple.
Well, I do not support capital punishment.
We don't give a shit what we support. The guy has to be killed. But I
am okay with vigilante justice. So again, I am very, very okay with the natural and logical consequences of one's own behavior coming back to them. That is not a problem for me. I don't support state-sanctioned execution.
Well, I was about to say, I don't give a shit what you want, hippie. I'm just saying that at this point, this guy's,
is he frozen or am I frozen? I'm frozen.
There needs to be something.
You were frozen. You were frozen for a second. Yeah. What'd you say?
I said that the guy needs to be dealt with and he does not need to go to court. Oh. Like the guy just needs to be dealt with.
Well, like I said, I don't support the death penalty. However, if that child's parents were allowed to stomp up and down on that guy's skull until he was no longer with us, I would be a really good person to be on that jury for those people. That's what I'm saying. I would be a good jury person for those people. So
it's good to know that the child is out of intensive care.
Is that true?
Or if he's just out of his coma, that doesn't mean he's out of intensive care. But
there's no way that kid could ever just be normal after that.
The type of damage that has been done to that child, the type of emotional, mental, physical damage, forget it. It's just
that's what I mean. Yeah. So if that were my kid, I'd kill him. Like I would. I don't think I'd even think anything of it. But again, still don't support capital punishment. So
I don't know any parent who would think otherwise. I think that's the key. Who would look at a situation like that and say that person deserves mercy? No.
No, we passed that so long ago.
No, we've entered into a whole new phase.
I have no more grace. I am all out of grace. That's just where we are. And I'm angry that I'm out of grace, which is why I'll never forgive the people that I will forever see as the reason that we are in this situation and that keep supporting it. I'm just so done. Yeah, no more grace to give.
Well, we are going to get to a fun segment tonight where we see the absolute physical, psychological, and emotional meltdown of all the Zionazis out there who simply cannot accept that somebody who is a Muslim socialist won the biggest mayoral seat in the entire nation, maybe the world, and did it in the heart of Zionist country. So to say that their ideology is in deep trouble would be an understatement. So much so that their level of desperation involves them trying to resurrect the career of Mayor Adams now, who everyone had assumed was on his way out, but now is going to get an infusion of millions and millions of dollars. That's what's going to happen.
They could try that. I don't think that'll work any better than Cuomo. I mean, criminal is a criminal, right? I mean, I just don't think that'll work. That whole race pleases me on so many levels. And let me preface this with, if he turns out to be another AOC, if he gets in there and doesn't really do anything, nothing would shock me. Nothing would surprise me. I have no false, idols. I have no delusions or whatever. However, that being said, the fact that the people that are being driven crazy over this, whether they're the libs or the right, pleases me at a level that I just can't stand. Like it's days like that I like that really just touch the heart for me. Like thinking about Michael Bloomberg and like that's warm and fuzzy. So regardless of what happens with him as a candidate or as a mayor or whatever, this moment is very enjoyable. That's what I'm saying.
And what I would also say is that in many ways, it doesn't really matter what Zohran does or doesn't do, because it's the symbolism of his win is what really matters here. This was a direct shot across the bow to the Israel lobby in a way that I don't think they're going to recover from. Like, I think there will be long-lasting effects of this victory, regardless of whether he wins in November or not. This comes down to they are on the ropes. And what they're also realizing is that no matter how much money they throw at this, it's probably not going to matter, because eventually everyone is just kind of hip to what's going on. And that's another thing that we're going to talk about as we transition with our guest this evening.
I just want to add something to what you said about another thing that this is also glorious to watch, with everybody freaking out, is the bigots in full form. The bigots are out in full form. Like, they're not even pretending. And again, these aren't people that are scared. They're not scared of him. They just don't like him. They're not Islamophobes. They're
scared of what he represents.
They are as capitalists, but I'm talking about the anti-Muslim, that kind of bigotry that we're going to see. They're not scared of him. They just don't like him. They're just bigots. So I do appreciate, again, I like to know who my bigots are. So I appreciate getting to see all that.
I think we all do. And I think with what we have to discuss this evening, we've been very adamant about the fact that Christian Zionism is a much bigger problem than people realize, because it doesn't get necessarily the type of media attention, because so much of Christian Zionism is centered in parts of the country that are not considered big markets. So much of what you hear about when it comes to Jewish Zionism is because it's centered in big markets: New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Miami. So when it comes to the issue of Christian Zionism, that is something that is much more, well, I wouldn't even say best served, but where you would find it much more commonplace are places like the Heartland, where Kayse is from, in Oklahoma, and Terry Heaton, who is going to be on the show in a minute. And this is for the small towns in America where the church is the center of town. If you come from a church that is centered around evangelical Protestantism, that is the embodiment of what Christian Zionism is all about. And it's very difficult, as it was for Jen, to escape that reality as a Jewish person. You can imagine how difficult it is growing up in that type of a church setting in small town America and trying to escape that. So without further ado, first and foremost, we'd like to welcome back our wonderful friend who I think we did a fantastic crossover podcast with once. So let's do it again. Kayse Melone, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you.
Hey, Kayse, and make sure, Peter, that we have her name spelled correctly when it comes
with a Kayse and an E instead of an A.
Correct.
Yeah. Super tricky.
Yeah,
yes.
No, I appreciate that. And it's like, once I know it, I'll always, think of it. Like with Margaret Kimberly, same thing. Thank you for coming back.
I'm so happy to be here. I love the rebrand. It's so funny because your Instagram account liked one of my stories, probably about Palestine, and I was like, "Who is this? Why do I follow them?" And I dug a little deeper, and I was like, "Oh, I love this! It's the Revolutionary Change podcast. I love it. It's amazing."
Thank you. It was time. 5 years, and I felt like my sort of sunshine logo of "Here Comes the Sun." I'm not feeling it anymore. You know what I mean? So it had to sort of go with where I'm at. And this was as far as Peter would let me go. So here we are.
I don't want to tear down the whole thing, although we're both wearing black this evening to go with our red and green and white looks. So yeah, free Palestine, as we say.
Yeah.
And of course,
black nails.
Oh, I love that.
So we are very pleased to welcome the author of The Gospel of Self, How Jesus Joined the GOP. Terry Heaton, welcome to Revolutionary Change.
I am absolutely delighted to be here with you. The thing that does my heart, it just swells my heart, is that I'm 79 years old, okay? I'm an old geezer. You guys represent young people. And, I'm so proud of what you're doing, and I want to encourage you to keep at it because the world needs to know what you know. And so let's get at it. I'm delighted to talk about Christian Zionism. I know a whole lot about it because I was the executive producer of the 700 Club and worked side by side with Pat Robertson. In fact, I was in part in charge of fundraising. So I know the hot buttons that CBN use. Abortion, of course, was number one at the time I was there. But number two, and a close second, was Israel. And, so we were consistently pumping out evangelical messages about the return of Jesus. I mean, 1948 was one, but the one that I want you guys to keep your eye on in the future is Jerusalem, is the Temple Mount. Someday, the extreme right wing of the Likud party wants Netanyahu to take down the mosque.
Yeah.
And rebuild Solomon's temple, temple number 3. And if that happens, that will be the beginning of World War III. Because it is the third, most important mosque in Islam, and they will not tolerate, messing with the temple. But keep your eye on it because they're gonna try. They will try. I promise you that.
Yeah. So how did you get out? We had somebody just post that they have like nightmares about the 700 Club. I mean, I know that we spoke about this with Kayse, but I've always been an atheist, right? So that I was raised Jewish, like my family was Jewish. There was Jewish holidays, Jewish brainwashing in terms of Israel and Zionism, but it was very secular for me. And I was always an atheist, but I'm fascinated how somebody can get out of that.
Well, I guess you could say I had an awakening.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've been a student all my life. I am always studying. And I think the same can be said for you guys. You never stop studying. And I study everything. And, I came to the conclusion that what I had done at CBN was wrong. And so I wrote The Gospel of Self to apologize for that. That book is my apology to the world for the role I played in advancing to what essentially became MAGA. And, so I know the roots of all of that. I know that it's all about money. The money people in the world, are pro-Israel, and that's just a fact. I'm sorry, and so when you follow, I'm also a deconstructionist, so I play this game called Why Because. I'll make a statement and then say why, and that has to be answered with a because. And if you keep doing that, and then the answer to that has another why and another because, and you keep going back, and I could, I learn things, and I just know too much. I can't lie about what it was that we were doing, which was basically pulling the wool over people's eyes in the name of contributions. So it's really very insidious, and it's all about money. I've got some questions for you that I want to put before you, and one of the biggest ones is, why does Netanyahu do posts in English?
You mean Milkowski? I almost don't want to give him any more grace of calling him this made-up name.
I know. That's fair, but why does
same reason
social media posts in English?
Because he knows his audience,
right? He's not talking to people in his own country.
No.
There's also, I wanted to quote you from an article that I pulled long ago from the Israel National News about, this is when they opened a Hasbara office to oversee social media. So here's what this article said, and this is unbelievable. The Bureau will concentrate on 3 main issues. The first is finding videos containing inflammatory content and subsequently filing an official request to have the social media sites take down these clips. The second measure will be the development of an application which will identify keywords such as knife and Jews in Arabic or other languages, enabling the ministry to track the creators and poster of inciting content. The third, and perhaps most important, is the actual intervention of staffers in discussions on social networks, where they will be tasked with distributing Hasbara materials from the foreign ministry. YouTube has staff in Tel Aviv to help the Hasbara ministry within the foreign ministry of Israel. So this organization has a grip on everything that we talk about in what I call the Great Horizontal. So we are fighting from a very difficult position, because it seems like Israel and all of social media is against us, or against anybody who will dare say anything critical of the state of Israel. Remember that the Balfour Declaration, one of the eras that I have studied most is World War I and the beginning of World War I. Woodrow Wilson created this entity called the Creel Committee, and their job was to sell the world on the business capabilities of the United States of America, and mostly our ability to make war. So it was an attempt. The Balfour Declaration was an attempt by the British to draw American Jews into World War I, and thus thrust America into being a world power. It's propaganda began really in earnest with the Creel Committee and the members on that committee: Edward Bernays, the father of public relations; Walter Lippmann, the father of professional journalism. Both of these guys worked hard to create in the media a sterile environment within which to drop propaganda, messages, advertisements. That was the whole game back then, before advertisements were few and far between in the yellow journalism newspapers of the day. So they came up with this idea. Bernays was especially insidious because he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. So he knew how to use psychology to manipulate people. And, a great illustration of this is one of his first clients was the American Tobacco Company. And so he went to New York to the suffragette marches, and he put cigarettes in the mouths of the suffragettes. And he told them to call them torches of freedom. Yep. And in so doing, all of these images were spread across every newspaper in the United States, hell, the world. And they showed these suffragettes smoking. So he was a sensational manipulator. I mean, high-class manipulator. And that's what we're dealing with today, throughout the world, is we're all being moved around by an elite few. And that was Lippmann's whole, thing, was you could create a small group of people who could run everything through the use of propaganda. And we should never forget that. So it's less, it's just about 100 years old that we've been dealing with this. And you have to go back to understand it completely. And, again, I know that you guys do this. You are both you're all three deconstructionists. And I applaud you for that, because I think they should teach deconstruction in high school.
I agree. And that's also one of the big problems that we have in a lot of parts of the country. We realize why education has been defunded so substantially. And there's just such a greater emphasis on the religious aspect, the evangelical aspect, particularly in pockets of, conservative politics. But I don't think people truly understand how significant a hold these pastors have. Now, I didn't pick out Mr. Robertson. I did pick out Mr. Hagee. To kind of show people exactly what type of a stranglehold Christian Zionism has from infancy on tens of millions of people in this country. This was filmed one day after October 7th, 2023.
King David has said, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And today we're going to do exactly that. Those of you who are here, those of you who are watching across America and around the world, today the Jewish people are at war for their very survival.
Well, you can tell that this guy's definitely got his shtick down to a T.
Yeah, because I'm sure he really loves the Jews.
And here's something that Kenneth Copeland said before the 2016 election. If Christians don't support Trump, they are risking the wrath of God. Trump has been chosen by God, and by rejecting him, they are rejecting God. They could be punished with barrenness, poverty, or even having a gay child.
Well, I mean, talk about punishment. Sarah,
I'm not going to lie, like that clip, it really does trigger so much of being in the evangelical sermons where they happen, where these atrocities are spoken, and it is so reminiscent of, I was 21 years old when I finally deconstructed fully and stopped calling myself a Christian. In that first 21 years, hundreds of sermons or Bible classes or lectures along the lines of supporting the statehood of Israel, supporting the Jewish people's right to their homeland. Not just, as you mentioned earlier, Jen, like it's not about loving the Jewish people. It's about ensuring that they specifically have the homeland of Israel. 55% of Christians, even just a few years ago, whether or not they were labeling themselves as Zionists, 55% believed that God gave that land of Israel specifically to the Jewish people. And so I just, it's really powerful to hear that sermon now still happening. And what I can tell you is, in all of those hundreds of lectures, all of those sermons that I sat through, and I guarantee this one as well, the Palestinian people, they weren't just, falsely labeled as the aggressors. They weren't just talked about as if this were a conflict between two parties. They were not mentioned at all. I literally never heard about the Palestinians until the past few years. And when I did my own research, right? So it is very sinister. It's very insidious. And that was so triggering to watch.
You asked me what changed in me, and one of the big things is in 2006, I have Palestinian relatives. My oldest daughter is a Palestinian. She's an Palestinian American. But my son-in-law and my 4 grandchildren, they are Palestinian. And so I went to Jordan and spent a considerable amount of time with them in 2006. And I could see that their window on the world was very different than the window that I had been looking through. And that really caused me to, they told me, for example, that there were carloads of settlers on the West Bank roaming around killing Palestinians with impunity. And I thought, logically, that just can't be. So when I got back home, I called a friend of mine, Jim Bitterman, who was an NBC correspondent. He may still run their bureau in Israel. And I asked him the question, is this true? And he said, absolutely it's true. And I said, why don't you report about it? And he said, I do, but the stories get spiked in New York.
Yeah. Well, again, it's all about money and power. Hence why a lunatic like John Hagee is able to espouse the message that he espouses, because they put the fear of God into people and they open up their wallets. It's that simple.
So let's bow our heads today and pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, King of the universe, the God who calls the stars by name, who holds the 7 seas in the palms of his hand. Today we lift up to you the state of Israel and Jerusalem, the city of God. We pray for the families who have been shattered by this vicious terrorist attack. We pray for the women and children who are now placed in tunnels to be used as objects of negotiation in the future. We pray for the wounded from the barrage of rockets. We pray for the IDF that you give them favor.
We pray for the IDF that you give them favor.
Well, I have an IDF story. Do you remember? This was many years ago. There was a 19-year-old IDF soldier who was caught on videotape. The videotape was made by a Palestinian. He was caught on videotape walking up to a helpless Palestinian who had been stabbed, and he lay bleeding on the street. He walked up to him, pointed his rifle at his head, and pulled the trigger. And that was what they call an extrajudicial execution. Well, the world was astounded by this. But what did Israel do? They put the guy on trial, sentenced him to 6 months in prison, and then released him after about a month because it was what the Israeli people were wanting. So how is that justice? It's not. And it just bears out the realities of what's going on over there. This is a power-hungry, money-hungry group of individuals who don't give a shit about anything else in the world except their own well-being. And they are not good citizens, and we should not be supporting them. We send them $10 million a day. $10 million every day, including weekends and holidays. Can you imagine that? That's $3.6 billion a year we've been sending to them forever. And so don't tell me this isn't about money. It certainly is about money. And of course, Israel supplies our weapons to the world. They are our arms dealer, if you will. And so people don't know any of this stuff. And, you know, I think if they did, they would be more like you guys. And
we try.
Well, you keep at it. Don't stop. That's what I have a nephew named Al Hytham. and he's a beautiful artist. He paints incredible artwork, murals and such. And he asks me about world events. We are constantly in touch via Facebook Messenger, and I keep encouraging him. I say, stay the course, because the attitudes are changing, and stay the course. Don't stop. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing. Stay the course. Don't stop. This is an enormous issue in the world. I mean, even the bombing of Iran. I mean,
I hear you, Lloyd. I'm with you.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable, the things that we will do in the name of Israel's so-called existential crisis. The existential crisis is with the Palestinians. Come on, let's be realistic here. But we prefer to live in this country under the dogma of Walt Disney, who built his entire empire on a phrase called the plausible impossible. And we live in an era of the plausible impossible, and we need to do something about it. And that's why you guys are so damned important in the world. Please don't stop. Please keep studying. Please keep pushing the message, because it needs to be pushed.
Well, we'll try, but unfortunately for Jen and I, as well as Kayse, Google could decide at any moment that they're just going to pull the rug out from under us. We never know how much pressure the corporate infrastructure is going to put. But I do believe that the Israel lobby is in possibly dire straits right now. It only takes, I know it's overstated because some say it takes only one, win to show that things can change. The significance of Zohran Mamdani winning, regardless of what he does, it's the symbolism of what he represents. A Muslim socialist in the heart of Zionist Jewish New York City, winning a mayoral primary with $35 million in a super PAC that we know of. There could be a lot more than that we're not even, that's not even on the books, that was spent against him to stop him. And it didn't work. And now it's going to get even worse, where the likes of people like John Hagee are going to go out there and start saying that somebody like Zohran Mamdani is like the devil incarnate. Like, that type of stuff is coming. That's the next layer that's going to continue. And so we will continue with what this bastard has to say. But
he's so gross. I lived in San Antonio for 6 years, and I would see him on occasion out and about here and there and whatever. He's disgusting. Also, he wears like a $200,000 watch, which doesn't seem like the watch of somebody who's exceptionally pious. I'm just, throwing that out there.
I've got something to point out about that, because I forgot the name of the pastor who bought the jet from Perry, and he defended it because it was such an amazing deal. God commanded me to buy it.
Right, yeah.
That's so good.
To crush the enemies of God. We pray for the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, that you give him the wisdom of Solomon in guiding Israel to victory over this tyranny. In your name we are praying. For he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The word says, let God arise and let his enemies be scattered. The word says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Let the curse of God come to the enemies of Zion. In your name we pray and ask these things. Amen.
I'm with Jimmy. Like, this is funny to me. Like,
it is, except for it isn't, because people believe it. But I just want to answer something. No, I would never be stalking him, but he was sitting at a table next to me and a couple of friends at J. Alexander's one time. That's as close as I got, was the table right next to me. It was very close enough.
Did he order one of each off the menu?
No, I wasn't. Honestly, I was not. And here's the thing is, for people who don't know, I have much, as an atheist, I always have some strong affinity with Catholics. And I did go to a Catholic law school. So I was there with Catholic people. So they already disliked him to begin with.
My dad's
what I mean? The Catholics already think this is off the wall to begin with. And
Mr. Hagee, how are you doing today? I'm doing fine, son. And the God is commanding that you give me one of each on the menu, and you will be blessed if you do.
I'm just saying.
Mhm.
Make him go away.
I'll
I
make
do
it.
it.
I would not be surprised, guys, if your YouTube channels are not throttled by Israel.
Oh, we already have been.
Yeah, you must be, because you would have so many more followers if you weren't. Another name for MAGA Christians that I really like is We Know Better Christians. And it's amazing how that stops the conversation. Even if they don't say it, that's what they're feeling. We know better. And it's pretty hard to argue with that. I've tried. I live here in Alabama, and I have some dear friends who are country people. One of them says, I asked him, why do you support Trump? And he said, it seems to me I have more money in my pocket when the Republicans are in charge. And that's all. That's what he said. So it's pretty hard to overcome that in dealing with We Know Better Christians.
I would definitely agree that there's a couple of layers in play here that I don't think gets talked about enough, and that is the neoliberalism of the Democratic Party and just the overarching neoliberalism that dominates the political discussion in this country is what drove so many people to Trump. But there was also an ungodly amount of money that was spent against Trump. So Trump he's an opportunist. He's a salesman. He does what he does. I don't think he's ideological in any way, shape, or form. For him, it's all about a means to an end. He saw an opportunity to get in with Jerry Falwell Jr., to get in with Pat Robertson, to get in with John Hagee, and it was a path to electoral victory. That's basically all it means to him, because you have the Democratic corporate liberal establishment, pro-war establishment, that paints Trump as the devil himself. So everybody's guilty as far as I'm concerned. And then the second Trump decides to get behind Israel when it comes to Iran, now you've got the entire corporate liberal establishment celebrating him. And if they're not, they're simply saying, well, you needed to go through the legislative process first to get approval to go bomb Iran. Not, oh my God, how dare you do something like that? It's, how dare you not get it approved by us first?
I have a couple of stories for you about guests on the 700 Club. Pat Robertson really, really did not like Jerry Falwell because he wasn't a tongue talker. And, you got to understand that is a big part of, Pat Robertson, a lot of these evangelical Christians. It's not just about dancing in the church or waving your hands. It's about speaking in tongues, so to say. The other thing is that one of the guest hosts that I brought on while Pat was running for president was Chuck Colson. I love Chuck Colson. He's gone now, but here was a guy who rejected all of the bullshit from these evangelicals, and still was able to reason with people because he was a reasonable person. And I really enjoyed being around him. He was a great influence on my life, and was a part of the reason why I left. It's just amazing to me that this group, MAGA, still exists and exists in such a visible way. It blows my mind because you can't argue with a closed mind. You know that, and so you just got to keep hitting it, at street level. At Mamdani, for crying out loud, only 2 of the bureaus in New York are dominated by Zionists. The others are not, and he spoke common sense, street level common sense to those people, and And I believe that is really what got him elected. And I am excited to see what he's going to do downstream. Can you imagine? He said he'd arrest Donald Trump if he showed up in New York. I think that's hilarious. And good for him. Good for the revolution.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's got to check him. I mean, that's the whole point. You know, you look at how corporate controlled the entire system is, and then you marry it to religion. That's when it becomes extremely dangerous. And that's when you also see so many of the people that are they're kind of fence sitting right now. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, on the one hand, is saying we should not be going to war with Iran, which is great. And then on the other hand, Zohran wins. And then she shows an image of the Statue of Liberty covered in like a Muslim veil that a woman would be wearing. I mean, I've seen worse.
Well, because she's a bigot. She's a bigot. You know, she doesn't want to be supporting wars that she doesn't think are in our interest. But that doesn't mean she's not a bigot. That's the thing. That really perfectly demonstrates how those things can coexist.
Yeah, and I'm also of the mind that the type of bigotry that people talk about in this country, especially today, and if you've been on this earth for 8 decades, you've obviously seen changes that have happened in terms of the overall disposition that people have about different races, colors, creeds, etc.
Can I give you my favorite Bible verse? It's in Jeremiah. Jeremiah is sent to Shallum, the son of Josiah. Josiah was a righteous king. And he did good things for the people of Israel. But Shallum was not. Shallum, erected the idols and went back to that whole thing. So God sent Jeremiah to talk to Shallum. And in referring to Josiah, Shallum's father, he said this: he pleaded the cause of the poor and the afflicted. Is this not what it means to know me, saith the Lord? I will never forget that Bible verse, and because I believe that God's heart, if there is a God, that God's heart is with the poor and the afflicted, and not with these assholes who have all this money and think they can manipulate everybody in the name of God.
I find that interesting because when I was in 9th grade, I actually did go to a place called Jewish High School, and there was a class, and it was Bible class, and I was asked about Jeremiah, and I kid you not, I'm like, Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Well, he was.
That was it. I don't think my teacher found that so amusing, but
by the way, I finally figured out who the biggest psychotic pastor I've ever seen. Kenneth Copeland. That's his name.
Oh,
right.
100%.
I mean, Kayse, you're a decent looking woman. How do you like it when a guy looks at you with those kind of eyes? I mean, isn't that exactly what you're looking for when you want to date somebody?
You know what? Here in Tulsa and in the heartland of evangelical imperialism, it's 3 out of 10 people.
I mean, really? Like his eyes are just like
Yeah. I know what clip you're talking about too. That was one of the initial clips that I saw when I stopped being a Christian, and it was very jarring in the, oh wow. This is what I've been under the spell of. That's been what convinced me to stick around this long. Like, yeah,
he's giving a look like God would have commanded that I take this jet. And I'm thinking, I want to pull every individual aside who's been following it and just say, do you really believe this? Or are you forced to believe this? Because the community makes it such. And
the people that are those leader people, those evangelical pastor leader people, they don't believe that crap.
I completely agree. The more I do this, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, people who actually believe in Christ-like things wouldn't do it in that way. Like, those things to me are very contradictory. So they clearly don't believe in what we would consider to be like Christ-like consciousness, right? Like they're most certainly not about that. So it always seemed like a grift to me.
Yeah.
So I dug a little bit into how essentially capitalism and Christianity became so intertwined, because I was like, the prosperity gospel, I mean, here we are with these super rich evangelical pastors, what's going on here? And it took me down the path of understanding what Calvinism is. Now, I was not raised as a Calvinist, but one of the core you were? Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but one of the core tenets in my understanding, one of the core doctrines, is that there's already a specific number of individuals who are predetermined to go to heaven. And so because of that belief, people who are navigating the everyday reality that we live in started wondering whether or not they were already predetermined to be saved. Well, some of the leaders in that community got together and they decided essentially, well, you can tell who's going to heaven based on how wealthy they are, based on how they have, you know, all of these blessings that God is giving them. That's how you know whether or not they're saved. And so it started decades and decades ago to start, you know, this really manipulative tactic of equating wealth with righteousness. And so that's something that I've really been looking into, but it does manifest into these leaders who have so much money, power, influence and end up butt buddies with the political leaders, right? Sway the congregation members. And meanwhile, the everyday people, by and large, could be kind-hearted, genuinely loving people, but they're fed all of this bigotry from the top because that's what sways their vote. And it's cyclical and really sad.
I think one of the things, and I've always thought this, is I don't think that religious institutions should get tax write-offs. I think that they all need to lose that status. Well, and then you will see who are legitimate people and who are not legitimate people. As soon as it isn't like a business venture that could be like where they hide their money. Yeah, but I think that like they should not get any sort of benefits from that.
If I could
follow
up on what you're saying, Jen, you want to change the world, yank the tax exempt status of the Council for National Policy. That's where all of the money is routed through to support all of these organizations. Yank their tax exemption and you will watch everything fall like dominoes.
What's so significant about that organization?
Well, one of the original founders was Pat Robertson, and so they're all it's all designed to help the right wing. Everything about it, and their tax exemption is based upon they have an education tax exemption. That's bullshit. What they're all about is propaganda and funding all of these organizations, Christian or otherwise, to the tune of millions of dollars. And, so if we yanked one tax exemption in the United States, let it be the Council for National Policy, and everything will collapse. And of course, they won't ever consider it because this is a very powerful organization. And, they live within the shadows. I wrote in my book about a meeting with Pat Robertson in 1984. There were four of us in attendance, and he said, we must form a shadow government because everything is going to collapse and they're going to need us to take over when that happens. And he was completely serious. So everything about him was about creating this shadow government. And that's what the Council for National Policy is all about. Do you agree, Kayse?
Yeah, so I see it as essentially an extension of the Heritage Foundation, which I'm sure you are familiar with, but it is very much more specifically about politics, and was the origin of the Christian nationalist movement. That is where we saw the abortion issue start to propagate through the mainstream discourse. However, the abortion question was really, that's why we call it a moral panic or the moral majority. It was to galvanize and mobilize all of the white evangelical Christians under this one umbrella, under the guise of moral panic. Meanwhile, the actual origin of the Christian nationalist movement is tied into white nationalism. It's tied into white supremacy. So the Council for National Policy was established to start enacting those policies under the guise, again, of family values and traditional Christian values, when behind the scenes, a lot of the conversations and actual institutional like changes they were looking at was to maintain segregation, right? So even Falwell Sr., he didn't start talking about abortion until many years after Roe v. Wade. But meanwhile, the Council for National Policy had already been formulated. They just used abortion as the issue to mobilize all of the evangelicals. So yeah, it's pretty dark.
You know that, I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Clay Shirky. He is a social science guy from, at the time I knew him, from NYU. I don't know where he is now. But he has a brilliant statement that I've memorized, and I would encourage you guys to do so too. He said, institutions will always try to preserve the problem for which they are the solution. You know what happens with social movements? Social movements don't die because they've achieved victory. They die because their scent of victory is in the air. And they have only one choice to continue, and that's to institutionalize. And in so doing, they must preserve the problem, for which they are the solution. And so abortion, and pro-life, the pro-life movement, that whole thing was an institution that was incredibly self-serving. And, as I've wrote in my book, and I think I told you guys this, Pat Robertson and I had lunch once, and I asked him, because I had taken over fundraising on the program, I asked him to teach me how to fundraise. And he said, people give to this ministry for these reasons in this order. How does it help me? How does it help my family? How does it help my community? How does it help my state? How does it help my country? And the very bottom one was, how does it help somebody else? So you can see that's why I called it the gospel of self. It's a very self-centered, expanding circles kind of thing. And it's science, fundraising at that level is science. I mean, we knew that X number of 700 club members within a year would become 1,000 club members, giving $1,000 a year instead of 700.
Right.
So based upon those statistics, we could extrapolate what would happen in the future, and therefore budget based upon that. So you're dealing with a scientific fundraising methodology at this level, and they still practice it all today. It's astonishing to me. And in a way, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Not in a good way, but what I will say, yeah,
exactly.
There's a lot of things that you could point to in our culture and economy that is not, it's not very good.
Speaking of the economy, can I just interject another thing? Is that, if you study, God gave capitalism to the Jews, the charging of usury, but he also gave rules for how it would not be permanent. Every 7 years, the bankruptcy laws are based upon the 7-year thing. And then on the 49th year, the year of Jubilee, when all debt was canceled and everybody went home. Why do these evangelicals not ever talk about that? Why? Because, my goodness, a year of Jubilee would destroy everything that they stand for, and it would eliminate the power structure, and they'd have to rebuild it.
Well, think how in better those guys with places like BlackRock.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, isn't it the same cabal of people, essentially?
It absolutely is. And
you're the church and state. That's what
right.
It is. And so when you think about the fear-based aspect of Christian Zionism, it gets taken up to an 11 when it comes to Jewish-based Zionism. And we're seeing that right now in obviously Gaza and the West Bank. And Jen has been on this, her own version of a crusade, if you will, since then, but it dates back way before then. We like to say we were way ahead of the curve on this several years in advance. And so when October 7th, 2023 happened, Jen put out like a formal statement on our behalf within a couple of days, basically dictating exactly what was going to happen. Only it's been a lot worse. And
Right.
so what has been stated, which is, as Jen is still predicting, 2 million dead people in the desert. It looks like we're already 20% of the way there that we're aware of right now. A Harvard-linked study finds Israel disappeared nearly 400,000 Palestinians in Gaza, half of them children. A study published via the Harvard Dataverse reveals that Israel has disappeared at least that amount, in this case, 377,000 that can be verified since the start of its campaign against the Gaza Strip in 2023. So when you still have people in the media saying that it's about 50 or 60,000 dead, you still have people like Bernie Sanders going on Joe Rogan and saying that October 7th was one of the worst days in history and we killed 1,200 people and it's like, if even he's going out there and making that type of a statement, there's a reason why we are hypercritical of people like AOC and Bernie in particular, because they're supposed to know better. They're supposed to be the people that are supposed to be leading the charge against this. Instead, now all the pressure is going to be thrown on this 33-year-old kid, basically, in political terms, that has now been thrust into a position that I don't even think he has any clue what he's getting himself into as the potential mayor of New York City. And now he's got to watch his back because there's clearly going to be people that are going to try to kill him before the election. And so I get upset because we have been shouting this from the rooftops ever since it happened. And we're coming up on almost 2 years now. And it's only getting
discouraged. Do not be discouraged.
I'm not discouraged. I'm just angry.
No, we're just on a rage-o-meter. I was on 13 on the rage-o-meter today before we even came on here. But I have been saying this for a long time, that this is not going to end without 2.whatever million people dead in the desert. That's the only way this is. I mean, and the fact that people are disputing it. And by the way, let's say it was just 50,000 people. Really? We're gonna have that, like that's where we're going with this discussion, is like how and if anybody, and this is now for me like really a line, anybody where the words come out of their mouth, Israel has a right to defend itself, you are dead to me. No one believes you. You're a grifter. Go away with that shit. Seriously.
Absolutely.
And that encompasses AOC and Bernie. And not only are they wrong in terms of the legal aspect of what they're saying, because they are, and they know it. See, that's the grift. They know that they're wrong. They know Israel does not have said right to defend itself. But anybody who's saying that, just go away.
Another thing that Israel is a master of is false flags.
It's coming.
ISIS, for example, that came about when world opinion was turning against Israel over the killing of 400 children in Gaza. And immediately, ISIS came about, beheading people and doing all of their mischief, destroying holy sites, Arabic holy sites and all of that stuff. That was bullshit. I'm sorry. That was bullshit. And we just had a Greek Orthodox church attacked in Syria just last week, I think, or the week before that. That was a false flag. Why? Tell me, why would Palestinians who are witnessing a change, a global change of opinion, why would they go out and murder some Christians at a church in Syria? They wouldn't. They just wouldn't. It's outrageous to think so. So who did it? Mossad, and the IDF. Come on.
I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it here because I don't think Iran is done yet. And I think we're not done with them. And I think that's what we're waiting on.
Right.
We're waiting on that.
Well, it's already been brought to our attention through social media that evidently there's been an uncovering of a terrorist, or that the Israelis are basically trying to create a false flag here in the States through a so-called terrorist cell and then pin it on Iran and drag us into another conflict.
I would not be surprised. Not at all.
Well, we made a post earlier about the fact that you've got the Donald coming out today saying that you should drop all the charges against Netanyahu. And it's like, why would you be saying that? The only thing that comes to mind is, number one, you're clearly blackmailed with the Epstein files. I mean, at this point, how much more obvious can you possibly make it? And maybe Trump is concerned that maybe he might be charged with war crimes or something. I don't know. But the actions that are still being taken by so many people is deeply concerning. But I also would like to believe that a lot of the American people are kind of getting hip to these kinds of so-called, well, you call them false flags, but they're just excuses to prolong the war machine. And so much of what, you know, the biblical aspect, obviously on the evangelical side, is very dangerous, because there are people that believe that the rapture is coming in their lifetime. And that's a very dangerous, irrational, as Jen likes to say, with reason. There is no reason when you're dealing with people.
And here's the thing. If the rapture was going to happen, it's happening in Ireland. It's not going to happen where you think it's going to happen. I was where it's going to happen. I just saw the place. I assure you, it's way prettier right there. Just saying.
Oh, is that what it's based on?
Okay. I'm just putting that out there. You know, it's a better place for a rapture. I felt infinitely more rapturous in that environment. So I'm just saying.
Well, the thing that I believe that we all have to be doing conscientiously is making sure that people understand just how absolutely not only psychotic this entire religious movement is, but I'm gonna show two sides of it now. As I mentioned, I need people to see just who Kenneth Copeland is. So
Is this very cringy, Kayse? Are you like putting on your like?
If it's the clip I'm thinking of, it's nightmare fuel for real.
Okay, but this should be something that should remind people of it. Everyone is just focused on Jewish Zionism. Trust me, Christian Zionism is just as bad, and here's why.
I'm a rich Jew backed by a richer Jew.
He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it.
This is Kenneth Copeland, perhaps the scariest and richest pastor in the world.
Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did.
Known for his $300 million net worth, $7 million mansion, and his 3 private jets, with his very own airstrip behind his house, he's managed to become one of the wealthiest pastors America has ever seen. And
I mean, he looks like a demon. Like, let's just.
He looks like he deserves that tax write-off. Yes, I could see why we would have his organization be tax exempt.
Go to your church to find out why. The first thing I noticed was Kenneth Copeland's store, selling everything you could think of and the Bible somewhere. But as the sermon began, I learned that a lot of this church's message was to basically claim blessings from God, and if you had enough faith, your life would be blessed. But only if you've contributed your tithes to help your favorite pastor Kenneth maintain his lavish lifestyle.
See, that's to me, as somebody who's, again, as an atheist, all religion to me, it's kind of, I don't believe it, right? But once you're sitting there and you're making it about a profit motive, how that's not sort of like a red flag for people. That's what always amazed me.
We used to, Kenneth Copeland tickles me. We used to say that his speaking in tongues was, he buy a Honda, she buy a Honda.
Yeah. I don't miss speaking in tongues.
Did you do that? Like Kayse?
Oh, yeah. No, I believed full throttle. Everything they told me, I just swallowed it down. So, yeah, I had my own personal language with God, he, him pronouns. I sure did. But, and I think that one of the sinister aspects of, as you were saying, a psychotic movement here, that has nothing to do with the internal personal transformation of everyday people that I do want to recognize. And, I always have to make all of these caveats as like a very outspoken atheist. Like, I think there is very real, what you might call spiritual transformations happening all of the time. And I hate to sound like, this isn't about attacking everyday Christians. This is about particularly going after the leaders and particularly being critical and critical of the ideologies and the results of those ideologies. So that's why it's like the result of evangelical Christianity, when it's intertwined with Christian Zionism, we're going to have to be critical of that. We're going to have to take some steps back and ask why so much violence is being done in the name of a non-violent person. I was thinking in my head mythological person,
no,
but
it works.
Of Jesus Christ, right? So all of this violence being done apparently in this guy's name, that I am going to be critical of that, and also remember that, the everyday Christians, in a lot of ways, I don't hate them. I pity them. I used to be one of the Kenneth Copeland followers, you know what I mean? And it is disheartening. And also I think one of the most sinister aspects of it is just how self-fulfilling all of the end time prophecies end up being, because people in my personal life who believe fully in their hearts that they are going to be raptured in their lifetime, they don't feel like they have to worry about climate change, just as one example, and so it's very self-fulfilling, and that becomes a very harmful result of this ideology.
Hence why they can just drill baby drill all throughout the
drill baby drill.
That's a big part. Drill baby drill, really great idea.
You're so good at all of the impressions. Bernie, Trump, great.
He does Bill Clinton too.
Oh, listen, when a pretty blonde shows up on the show, I definitely have to I'm sorry, it's gotta be me.
You just can't help it.
I think it's very important that we do not lose sight, because we did a clip about the fact that AOC is a total political opportunist. That's not to say that she doesn't have good ideas or that she can rally people, but people are so afraid, especially progressives who are completely caught up in their feelings. Like, they are so afraid of any type of constructive criticism of the people in question. When Mahmoud Khalil was released from the detention center in Louisiana the other day, AOC had no effing business being there with him. Like, none. You want to make a mess, you want to put a shout out, that's fine. It's the same thing with Zohran. But she has to be in the center because, again, politics is politics. And for them, this is a career. And they still don't understand that there's levels on the spectrum in terms of how much of a douchebag you can be in terms of not actually being there to help people. Now, I love Bernie. I always have, and I always will. But he is a Zionist in his own way. There is no getting around it, because as ZEI Squirrel, which is one of the absolute best accounts on all of Twitter, if you don't follow it, you definitely should. 20 months into an ongoing genocide, Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan to tell everyone that Israel has the right to defend itself. Hamas are evil terrorists who began the war by killing 1,200 people, including rape, soldiers.
Again with the rape narrative.
Israel, Hannibal, directive killings of their own civilians, and then also doing the Zionist genocide laundering calculus that like 29/11s for us, which of course he never does for Palestinians in Gaza. And keep in mind, this is after the report was released that almost 400,000 Palestinians are missing. And then blaming everything on Netanyahu's government to deflect all blame from Israel, even though over 95% of the Jewish Israeli population fully backs the genocide. I mean, there's a reason why the Likud dominates the state of Israel. Like Jen says, they've pushed any semblance of normal Israelis have been pushed out of the country now.
Long time ago.
This is the most prominent leftist politician in the U.S., and he is spouting genocidal Zionist propaganda that his own base and the majority of the American public do not believe. That is how much of a depraved, fanatical, all right, it is what it is. Blah, 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 Bernie Sanders is and always has been. I'm not going to agree fully with that statement. However, when you are so fully indoctrinated into Jewish Zionism that you completely devalue every other aspect of your political ideology, you get what you deserve. Colin, do you have the brief clip of Bernie and Joe Rogan, which I think is like attached to this?
You just got to rub the salt in the wounds, right? You got to show us
people to hear it.
out.
I don't need people to be telling me.
I'm so disgusted.
Yeah, but that's people need to know this, just like people who don't like the fact that they're coming on our clip right now about AOC and Zohran, and they don't like the fact that we're criticizing AOC. Tough shit.
Oh, we have someone else in there saying Rogan sucks. We're not here to tout Rogan. Nobody cares. Like, we're
it's like people need to. They still want to talk about how much they don't like Joe Rogan. I'm like, I don't give a shit if you don't like Joe Rogan. Like, it doesn't matter. This is what matters.
You know, Israel was attacked by Hamas, and Hamas is a terrible terrorist organization. They killed 1,200 people, which in a small country like Israel is a lot of people. Terrible, terrible attack. It's a war crime. Israel had a right, in my view, to defend itself.
That's it right there. Game over. Done. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Go away. I can't.
Still talking it up.
I just can't.
Still talking it up. He won't say it. And I don't care what the reason is that he won't say it. If you won't say it, then don't say that. Just don't say anything.
Well, or just here's the thing, and I really want to say this very clearly for people like Bernie and AOC, and not that this ever gets them. Take the AIPAC money. Seriously. It's like, at least take the money if you're going to be their whore. I don't understand this at all. You're doing their bidding and not taking the money. There's nothing noble about that. Seriously, both of you.
I want everyone in the chat and everyone who is seeing our channel now that, God willing, will continue, if God exists, continues to grow. I just have to say that. Understand this, and understand this about Bernie, and understand this about anybody else that you think you need to be touting in politics right now. Because as we said, the change we seek is going to come from outside electoral politics. The idea that there is a Harvard study, not a Gaza ministry from Hamas or some bullshit, the most highly reputable university in the United States has released a report saying that at a minimum, 377,000 Palestinians are now dead in Gaza. You would think that something like that would trigger a joint press conference between Bernie and AOC saying that we cannot stand idly by as Israel perpetuates a genocide on the Palestinians anymore. But they won't even do that. They won't even acknowledge that that report came out. But you want to sit on a podcast that's going to be seen by over 10 million people potentially and talk about how Hamas is a bad organization and they killed 1,200 people. There is no excuse for this. So stop with the fucking teams. Like, I've had enough of it. Like,
what's it like, Kayse, in Christian Zionist communities in terms of how what they're do they have the exact same talking points?
Yeah, so you can imagine that where I'm at, the discourse surrounding pretty much any conversation about any political conversation at all just is spewed propaganda. Like and we've talked about this before about how actually, Peter, you were talking about this earlier about the education system specifically in the more rural communities. And even here in Oklahoma, Ryan Walters, I actually pulled it up for you guys. Yeah, June 24th, a couple days ago, issued a memo on the conflict of Israel and Iran, right? So it's like specifically being mandated how to frame these geopolitical questions in a sense that does not encourage critical thinking. It does not encourage any research or questioning or whatever. The public school system in Oklahoma is now officially having this mandated propaganda to be taught in classrooms. So the general discourse here, it's just spewing exactly what the people on top say is really what it is.
Well, they just passed something. I think Texas, I forwarded it to you, Peter.
Yes.
It's now required in public schools in Texas for them all to have the 10 Commandments in them.
Oh, yeah. That's part of it. The creationism has taken over. It's wild, you know, and even in private school, like obviously it's a little bit different, but I remember saluting the American flag, the Christian flag, and the Bible every single day. Like it's indoctrination on both a political and religious nature. And I get a lot of feedback from people in my community saying, why are you talking about both religion and politics? And I'm like, it's because that's where I am. It's because that is the environment that is around the majority of this country geographically, not necessarily population wise, but it's pretty wild. And it's really disheartening. As Terry was saying earlier, it does remind us like, okay, if we have this awareness and we can connect with people, you know, at least in, you know, Florida or whatever, these other states, other people who might have similar understandings and awareness, we at least have that. And it is kind of on us to continue pushing forward and moving the needle as much as we can in the face of this gray cloud of lack of critical thinking.
Well,
what's the Christian flag? We got a question from Travers. What's the Christian flag?
It is the same colors as the United States flag. It's very similar.
Isn't the cross like in where the stars are instead? Is that
Yeah,
what it
so
is?
it's a white background, a blue square where the blue square is on the American flag, and then a red cross in that blue square. So it's really similar. I don't know if I remember the pledge off the top of my head, but it's somewhere rattling around in the back of my brain.
I wouldn't even say the regular
Jesus
pledge.
Christ.
I started getting sent to the principal's office every day in the 3rd grade for refusing to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm like, do not. First of all, I wasn't going to say under God under any circumstance.
Well done.
Yeah. Oh no. But it was, it was a constant pain in the ass for my parents. But the idea of standing up, crossing my heart, the whole thing, no, that's nationalism, not patriotism. People should know the difference. And it always seemed cultish to me.
I want to defer to our elder statesman here because you grew up in the 40s and 50s. And one of the reasons I believe that we're living in an age today where there is this hyper intensive push for, Christianity taught in schools, or just all forms of hyper religiosity taught in schools now, is because in the day and age that you grew up in, they didn't have to push this on people. It was considered a normal part of everyday existence that religion was you didn't question it. But because there's so much questioning of it today, they are losing their grip on it. So they're feeling like, well, we can't just do it in the church. We got to do it in the classroom too. We got to get them when they're kids because they're starting to break away from us. That's my thought on all of this.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely true. It was assumed, culture-wide, Christianity was assumed in the 50s. And, when I was growing up in the 40s and 50s, and I went to a Calvinist church, I had 13 years of catechism under, teaching about John Calvin and his beliefs. So, absolutely, it was just assumed and nobody questioned it. Not really. And anybody who did was just, he would look down at them as being crazy. So, Vietnam had a lot to do with that, the draft. And, I got my draft notice. I escaped because I played the 5-string banjo in a bluegrass band on TV every Friday morning. And the Coast Guard recruiter recognized me. And so he moved me to the top of the list and I got into the Coast Guard and spent 5 years there. So I escaped, where a lot of my friends didn't. I remember going to Detroit and taking my physical for my draft, and it was the most terrifying thing I ever went through because I knew what it meant. And we all, we knew that was bullshit. And so, the counterculture movement of the 60s played a big role in my transformation. And, even though I swallowed it hook, line, and sinker in 1980, it didn't last very long. What most people don't know about my tenure at the 700 Club is that I was a baby Christian when I got there. Can you imagine putting a baby Christian in charge of all of that? I led, because I played the guitar, I led worship at CBN, all of the songs, and I was really good at leading worship. And one day I woke up and I threw my back out and it was just awful. And so I called Pat and said, I'm not going to be able to make it. And he said, no, you're going to make it. Come on down. We're going to get you healed. So I had to go up on the platform and, he laid hands on me and everybody prayed. And then he made me bend down and stand up, bend down and stand up. I was in agony doing that, but I went along with it to participate in the ruse. And that's how deep you can get in to this shit. And I think Kayse knows that. It's a struggle to get out, but once you get out, you want to tell the world. And that's what I tried to do with my book.
Last topic before you guys go, I think is important to cover. I have no love at all whatsoever for Joy-Ann Reid. I think she's one of the worst people in all of corporate media, and she's not there anymore. Whether it was because she had an attack of conscience regarding what happened in Gaza, it was a topic that a lot of people grew a conscience on. So as much as Joy feels like she's somebody who really stood out, Tucker Carlson did as well. And so did a number of other people. But she decided to go on or make her rounds, if you will, on a number of corporate media, or I should just say independent media and corporate media channels, including CNN, but also on The Breakfast Club, and discuss what it's like to speak out against the state of Israel and just this whole Zionist movement in general.
The piece is Gaza. And you just can't get away from the fact that talking about Gaza in a way that humanizes Palestinians is not the usual way that cable news operates or that any news in this country operates. For whatever reason, that topic makes people uncomfortable.
She knows the reason. She damn well knows the reason. For whatever reason.
Who funds your channel? You know,
whatever reason.
And listen, don't you ever forget what I did when I was president in 1996, when I put together one of the most nefarious bills in the history of the country, the Telecom Act of 96 with Newt Gingrich. Boy, we really did a number on this country with that, didn't we? So when you consolidate all that media power and you go from 55 media companies down to 6 and now 5, this is what ends up happening. And the billionaire class that is, as you said, Terry, very pro-Israel, and for most of it is business interests, they will not tolerate anything that threatens the state of Israel in any capacity. And that includes firing everybody if they have to, no matter how much the mask comes off, even though I believe that
you don't get to have a conscience just because you got your ass fired.
Exactly. Well, because again, for her, it's all about, you know, it's a pity party. But it's important to note that sometimes those that are scorned are also going to tell the truth about what's really going on.
Which is why nobody should ever hire them in the future.
Good point.
Right. Regular folks uncomfortable because I think the majority of Americans agree that what's happening there is not just a genocide, but is unconscionable for us to participate in. I think most Americans believe that, agree with that. But there was a discomfort with that topic that I saw in the policing of my social media, in requests to not like certain things on social media. Just there was a sense that topic, it makes people uncomfortable.
Saying you want to see innocent men, women, and children not be killed shouldn't make anybody uncomfortable.
It shouldn't. It didn't with Rwanda. When the Hutu and the Tutsi were slaughtering each other, we very easily in the media said that was a genocide, right? I mean, if you look at what Russia is doing to Ukraine, when they bomb a school or a hospital or a music school, that is reported as.
You see, this is when
that's where it all comes crashing down.
Because all she's doing is throwing out NATO talking points like Ukraine is completely innocent of this. The Ukrainian people are, but the Ukrainian government isn't. And the same is true with our influence through NATO and what's going on in Russia. So her attitude is, I'm going to be very corporate friendly with this topic, so maybe they'll let me back in. What in the hell that has to do with anything is completely pointless here. And again, this is why I don't sympathize with people like her. But she is telling her version of the truth, and she is admitting why.
There's not versions of a truth. Continue.
Barbaric. It's reported as genocidal. When they're stealing Ukrainian children and kidnapping them to Russia, there's moral clarity from the media, and there's no hesitation to say that what Russia is doing is evil. But when it comes to what's happening to the people in Gaza, number one, it isn't talked about that much on U.S. media. If you go overseas, it's on a lot more. And then number two, the way it's spoken about is, I don't know, maybe it's like when a friend is doing something wrong, you don't want to talk about them. You don't want to say anything negative. But there is a hesitation. I definitely think that's a thing in American media.
I don't know why you wanted to watch that. That was so sad and pathetic.
I know. It's very difficult to listen to anything that comes out of that person's mouth, considering how badly she has lied over the years, particularly about her own bigotry that she tries to deny and was caught red-handed, if you remember. And she claimed that it was like an FBI inside job or some crap. But that being said, she is still saying that the reason I was fired from MSDNC is because I was willing to tell the truth about Gaza. Now, whatever possessed her to go ahead and say that, I mean, I'll still give her credit for saying what needed to be said. She'll still come back with her NATO talking points and just make a complete fool out of herself. But it also goes to show you that there is no wiggle room. when it comes to corporate media, whether it is MSNBC, whether it is CNN, whether it is Fox News, you cannot and will not deviate from America is Israel, Israel is America, and that is the end of the conversation. And if you even attempt to get away from it, you will be made an example of. And with all due respect to Joy Reid, because she's small potatoes, but if they can make an example out of Tucker Carlson, they can make an example out of anybody. There is no limit to how far they'd be willing to go in terms of protecting the state of Israel. And I think a lot of it is driven ideologically by Christian and Jewish Zionism, but it's also certainly very economic at the same time. So while I have zero sympathy whatsoever for Joy Reid, I can still appreciate the fact that she's still saying that this is why I was released. It had nothing to do with me doing a bad job, although she sucks at it anyway. But the fact that she's willing to tell the truth about such a crucial issue. How can she be so forthcoming about the issue of Israel-Palestine and AOC and Bernie feel the need to still play politics on this issue? There is no playing politics on this issue anymore. There never should have been in the first place. But the idea that they're still doing it is completely disheartening. And I understand why so many people want to check out of politics at this point. So as we wind down the conversation, what do you guys want to see happen? I mean, obviously, we appreciate your enthusiasm, Terry, and we are going to stay with it. We're not giving up on this. But I still think that we have to be more conscientious of what are the best potential avenues that we need to be exploring in terms of how we continue to convert people onto the side of the religious indoctrination is going to be the death of us if we don't get away from it. And we have to do everything we can to rally enough people to eventually free the Palestinians as best we can.
Well, I think, gosh, we've just scraped the surface of this whole thing. I think one thing that I say to Christians, I use the book of Ecclesiastes because that book is very different than anything else in the Bible. It's Solomon writing about life under the sun. And there's a verse in there that says that basically, I'll paraphrase, life under the sun is governed by time and chance, which shoots a hole in anybody's God has a plan, God has a reason. There was a reason that it rained on our picnic and not the picnic 100 miles away. Bullshit. Time and chance governs life under the sun, period. And I believe that. I also think that we have let the right define woke, and yet we don't define MAGA. Where is the definition of MAGA? We need to create one. And that's what I advise Democrats here in Alabama, and I do try to help them as much as I can. But this is such a red state, it's very, very difficult. And I had another thought, but I forgot it. Maybe it'll come to me while Kayse is talking. I'd rather hear her talk anyway.
Well, I think those were all great points. I've really appreciated this conversation. I always love chatting with you, Jen and Peter. I think that one thing that I often talk about in my live streams and in my content is about how, honestly, moving away from the religious fundamentalism that I grew up in was a privilege. And I think that really the conversation about politics and religion being too intertwined is a great start. I think that one of the major steps in releasing us all from this hell of religious fundamentalism and how it does affect politics so violently, honestly, is what it boils down to when it trickles down across, the rest of the world, is actually improving the material conditions of the everyday people. Because as that clip about Kenneth Copeland that we watched just now was saying, a lot of the people in the congregation are moved by the pastor's rhetoric with the promise of future blessings, whether in this life or in heaven, right? People are hurting and they are tired and they are feeling the weight of capitalism. Now, we're here in, the heart of the empire. We have this privilege of being here and not in all of the other communities that are being exploited by us. And that is important to recognize. But I think that there is actual hardship that a lot of the poorer rural communities, the uneducated communities are feeling. And when we have the material conditions to allow them to explore their own critical thinking, the actual indoctrination and propaganda that's happening, I think that religious fundamentalism will naturally dwindle. And so I am very heartened by Mamdani's win. I really am. I do think, it's kind of a balance of, okay, let's not celebrate too much. There's still a lot of work to be done. However, I think at the very least, as Peter was saying, like, I do think that it is symbolic and it is indicative of a movement that is growing. And I thought the same exact thing actually about please don't go the way of AOC, right? We had such high hopes for AOC in the very beginning of her political career. And then it's like somewhere along the line, she did have to kind of give way to the immense weight of the institution, of the establishment. And my gut instinct is telling me that it's going to take a lot of different Mamdanis is what it's really going to take. One is great. That's a great start, honestly. But in order to actually bring about effective change, in order, honestly, for Mamdani not to get sucked into the same path, it's going to take a coalition of a bunch of different, which, you guys all know all of this, but the answer to the question of how to minimize, reduce the harmful impact of religious fundamentalism through LGBTQ discrimination, through Christian Zionism, through personal violence, interpersonal violence, I think is actually going to be improving the material conditions for everyone. Universal basic income. Can we just try that,
Yeah.
You guys have been great. Links are in the description. It is imperative that we continue to spread the word about the dangers and the pitfalls of Christian Zionism. It does not get talked about enough. It is our job at Revolutionary Change to continue to make sure that people are as informed as they can be. And so if you live in Oklahoma, if you live in Alabama, if you live in Texas, if you live in Arkansas, if you live in Kansas, if you live in South Carolina, you know somebody who is affected by evangelism, and it has completely affected their ability to function in a rational way, especially in lieu of everything that's going on today. I mean, anybody who thinks that Donald Trump was sent by God, Lord knows, maybe that's just enough to finally get you to wake up. So with that said, we really appreciate you guys being here this evening. Very nice to meet you, Terry. Kayse, always a pleasure. And we will definitely be speaking with you guys again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
So
I have to address the troll that got deleted earlier. Did you watch all that went down?
I'm trying to pay attention to as many things.
No. And let me be clear, because, people who are new here, whatever. If you start just generally talking nasty shit about Jews, you're going. Okay. Yeah. I really want to be clear. I was raised Jewish. That the most favorite people in my whole life, like my bubby, who was the greatest woman who ever probably walked this earth. I'm just saying, I'd argue that. These were Jewish people. So I'm not going to tolerate shit about the Jews. You want to talk about Zios? Have at it all day, every day. But we're not going to start talking shit about my tribe. Thank you. Onward.
And for that public service announcement, make sure you go over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you could become a supporter of our small but mighty and growing channel. We are going to determine what is going to be the best direction for us to go as far as a call-in night is concerned. Based on the numbers this evening, it would seem like Thursday might be the ideal night to do it.
That's fine. I don't know if everybody has a consistent schedule, but I did catch that, like, we went live same time that Lee Camp was going live. I saw that Sabby had something premiering. Now, I don't know if that means it's live, because premiering could just be replaying. I don't know, at 8. So we're going to have, it's going to depends on who else is out there.
That's true. But I think it's fair to say that Saturday is definitely sort of the preeminent night now because of the amount of live viewers that we get. Tonight, we've been hovering around 200. But like you said, if a number of others are going live at this time, we have to consider what makes the most sense. We don't want to dilute the product, so to speak.
No, and you know what, though? And that's fine. If we're going to do, so one of our nights, we're going to do a show where members can call in. Yes, it's an inspiration for people to be members if they want to call in and have a chat. So I like that aspect of it. But yeah, I think that's fine.
So for YouTube and Patreon members, you will be able to call in and chat with us about any of the topics.
Okay, so Sabby's live and Lee is live.
So there you go.
There you go.
So Vin, thank you so much. Howdy from Broward County. I love the new name. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you for the $2.
Do we know him from here? Or did you just said Broward County, but you didn't recognize him?
I didn't recognize him. Okay. It's possible. I mean, maybe he might be somebody I recognize. I haven't looked that closely.
Do we know you from here?
Brett Boyle, our trusted mod. Thank you so much for the 2 Canadian A. Let's go with those likes, everyone. If you haven't hit that like button, if you're new here, if you haven't subscribed, please make sure that you do. Any amount of help truly is appreciated.
Yes.
JM, thank you for the like and the $2. Sailor Jerry Swallow, thank you for the 5 Canadian A. This Hagee or whatever it is he isn't it. Is dangerous. Great show again. Thank you so much for being here and your support. Our good friend Willie Bragg at the Willie Bragg Show. Thank you for the $5. To hell with Pastor John Hagee. I don't even think he deserves the moniker of being called pastor.
Aha. Thank you, Willie. Wait. I just, before you do that, he was at the Jimmy show.
Interesting. Oh, we know what happened at that show.
We all know what happened at that show. All right. Sorry. Back to super chats.
Jen's like the kid who gets hold of the wheel and is like,
no, because I know if it goes past, I will forget it, and then it won't get addressed, and I just can't live with that.
Fair enough. Brett Boyle, thank you so much for being a 2-month member, and you're doing great. Love this community. We love it too. You guys are great. S. Kolachuk with the 2 Canadian A, stage 4 capitalism. I wonder what happens in stage 5. That'll be interesting. S. Kolachuk with the 5 Canadian A, there is a big difference between kneeling down and bending over. I guess it depends on how I'm just not going to.
Never mind. Don't go there. Don't go there. Seriously, don't go there.
The progressive lefty with the 6.99 Canadian A, Palestinians have a right to fight back against their oppressors. Don't tell that to the Zionists. Arlene Chambers, thank you so much for the $10. It's shameful, and Bernie knows it. He is complicit in spreading propaganda. And yes, he is, even though Bernie will rephrase it and say Netanyahu is committing war crimes and he needs to be dealt with, but that's not acceptable.
That's not rephrasing anything. He's still saying the rape thing.
Yeah. If you're still saying that, then you're justifying.
Evil Tricky Spider is saying pajama party on Thursday. Just so you know, it's always pajama bottoms in here.
Anyway, right.
Always.
S. Kolachuk with the $2. Thank you so much. And the good panel and interview. Yes, they were great to chat with. And one more. Ozma, thank you so much. Great to see you. $4.99. Wonderful show, guys. Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you for your amazing support. So I think it's fair to say that what happened the other night was a political earthquake in a good way. We will reserve judgment on Zohran, but obviously the people that have clearly lost their minds, Jen, and there are quite a few of them, they're not very happy about this.
And that's what we see, and that's what we can judge this by and judge the win by. Because every single person that is freaking out about this is someone that I view as an enemy to what we're trying to do. And it doesn't matter where they are on the political spectrum. The one thing that all of those people will have in common is they're opposed to what I'm trying to do. And so it doesn't matter whether they're Republicans or if they're liberals. Doesn't matter to me. If you're freaking out about a Muslim, and by the way, democratic socialist, which again, we don't need to go rehash all of the labels and stuff like that. But if that's what you're whichever part of that freaks you out, you're part of my problem. So to me, just watching all the people that are part of my problem have their panties in a bunch is just very entertaining. I live for that shit. I watch some dark, horrible shit all day long. So when there's some fun stuff, yeah, I'm in it. I'm for it.
Here we go.
Democratic Socialist candidate Zohran Mamdani has won the New York City Democratic Mayoral Primary. And a lot of the world's worst people are having completely unhinged reactions.
I'm so excited you're playing
Let's have a look at some
Wait
of the
a
worst.
second. Wait a second. You have to preface this.
Pundit.
I sent this to you.
Yes, give a shout out to Nathan J. Robinson
Yes.
of Foreign Affairs. He did a really good job.
It is a perfect compilation, exactly, of people that I think are disgusting being unhappy. Yeah, it's feel good. Yeah.
I also find it interesting that Nathan just cannot lose his British accent. It's just he's tried, but it still pops out every once in a while.
And all of these people, by the way, need to be called out for the fact that they're bigots. They're bigots, because that's what it really comes down to. Because it isn't the fact that you're not really hating on him because of his concept of, I don't know, people having housing and healthcare. You're not, or you wouldn't be showing 9/11.
No,
see, that's just your bigotry right there.
Exactly. If there's one thing that, and that was the point that I was trying to make earlier, is that if there's one thing that is crystal clear, and I mean crystal clear, is that Islam hate, as you now say. Don't say Islamophobia, because it's Islam hate. If you want to know what
it's why I'm just called it bigotry. It's bigotry.
Yeah, it is. Hands down, full stop, bigotry. And it goes with the liberals and the conservatives. It's equal opportunity on this.
Oh, yeah. Benny Johnson posted a picture of the 9/11 attacks. In 2001, we will never forget. NYC in 2035 elects a jihadist, which Mamdani is not. Ben Shapiro posted a still from Planet of the Apes suggesting New York is headed for apocalyptic.
Oh, that's not bigoted. That's not bigoted at all. So literally you're comparing this person to an ape. Oh, but we're not supposed to see that as bigoted. You constantly playing victim, anti-Semite, calling douchebag. Ben just irks me.
You know that Ben is having he's having a moment. He's having a real moment.
Piece of shit.
Destruction. Charlie Kirk also invoked 9/11, saying a Muslim socialist is now set to run New York City.
We have to pause.
A lot of people.
Charlie Kirk needs to go get fucked. He needs to go get fucked. It needs to go get fucked, because what he's doing is the equivalent of people that are conflating Zionism and Judaism. Stop conflating what 9/11 was with Muslims. Stop doing that, you piece of shit bigot.
The other thing you have to keep in mind when you're doing something like this is that you're also trying to inspire a Zionist nut job in the greater New York City area to track down Zohran.
Well, yeah, but stop calling out that he's Muslim. What the hell does that have to do with anything unless you're a bigot? This is why I like this. It's so clear.
Yeah, well, I like my bigots to be out front.
I do too. I'm very happy with hate speech. Please, by all means, continue.
A Muslim socialist is now set to run New York City. A lot of people using the word Muslim as if that's a bad thing. These are a bunch of bigots. Stephen Miller said Democrats have shown how unchecked migration fundamentally remade the New York City electorate.
Oh
my God,
City
has been an immigrant city. How unchecked migration fundamentally.
I'm just losing it.
Now, if anybody knows who Stephen Miller is, if you want to know who the biggest bigot is in the entire Trump administration, that's
he's Goebbels. He's Goebbels.
He's Goebbels, and he's definitely packing a small one. I have no doubt he's
wearing ladies' underwear.
Ladies' underwear, yeah, something like that.
Fundamentally remade the New York City electorate, although New York City has been an immigrant city forever. Jonathan Chait said that he wouldn't globalize the Intifada.
First of all, that man doesn't know what the Intifada is, which I find none of them do. I even like it when in Congress and committee they call it the infitata. Go back to look at the infitata.
Or a frittata. Cook up your frittata.
This picture is so slanted. Just that picture alone is so trying to purposefully make him seem like sly or cunning.
Like it scary guy.
Ridiculous. See, and here's the thing: it's not working. He's still cutie poo. Continue.
Jonathan Chait, by the way, is one of the biggest liberal Zio scumbags in all of politics. This guy, you know the old saying about if a person stopped short, they would not only be up their ass, it'd be coming out their mouth. Well, that's Jonathan Chait with Hillary Clinton. Remember
so again, I love that we're going back and forth from pieces of crap like that to Charlie Kirk. Like again, it's all of the people that are working against me are all upset in one place. It's beautiful.
He wouldn't globalize the intifada, which Mamdani hasn't said that he would do either. He just explained what some people mean when they say that term. A Democratic operative named Rachel Beitkofer.
Peter made us talk to her. Go back, people, and look. I did not want her on the show. Peter, that was one of the people.
I kind of wanted to just test a theory, and the theory proved to be correct.
We had her on a few years ago. It was horrible. And
so we had, as I like to refer to her, as Dollar Store Melissa McCarthy.
I think that's insulting to, and I don't even like dollar stores. It's insulting to dollar stores and Melissa McCarthy.
New York City is going to have to go through the full San Fran experience to recover its sanity. Keep in mind, this woman basically lives on her couch. Just saying.
Well, New York City.
Not just that, but notice how. So her issue with him is what exactly? So what are you saying, Rachel? What are you saying? That because he wants to attack your neoliberal capitalistic housing crisis problem that you've created with your privatization and your for-profit friends. So that is the scary thing. I'm not understanding. Clearly. What are you saying?
And she's clearly paid by the Democratic Party. Otherwise, there's no way she'd be mouthing off like this. It wouldn't make any sense.
San Fran Experience posting a picture of a tent city. The difference, of course, being that San Francisco is run by rich liberals, not by democratic socialists. Billionaire Bill Ackman, who tried his best to get sex pest Andrew Cuomo elected, said we deserve the city that we're going to get.
Now
that we agree with. That we agree with. I believe everybody is going to get what they deserve to get.
Now, keep in mind, Bill Ackman has already made it very clear that one of two things are going to happen, Jen. Number one, he is going to give a shitload of money to Eric Adams, who is still the incumbent mayor, even though he's running as an independent. But he already said in his first press conference that he is still a Democrat. He just needed to drop the Democrat label because of the legal issues that he's going through right now. Let me tell you something. I will whip, if I'm Zohran right now and my competition is Eric Adams, I'm just going the old school route of Ronald Reagan. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
And guys, we will get way more into that on Saturday night because we have India Walton coming on. And I think a lot of that discussion is better with her.
Absolutely. But Bill Ackman is somebody who, like Ethan Klein, but on a much grander scale because he's a multi-billionaire, he's married to an Israeli Zio princess as well. So it runs in the family, to say the least. And so of all the people that are going to go ham in many ways to try to stop Zohran from winning, Bill Ackman, who has gone between supporting Joe Biden and Donald Trump, because again, for him and his class, it's all about corporate special interests. It doesn't matter who's in charge, as long as they're adhering to the will of what he and his fellow cohorts want. And in the case of New York City, and the fact that he's a bigot Zionist, it should not surprise anybody that he's going to be very active in trying to stop Zohran from winning. Who knows what lengths he may go to do so?
They all will.
They'll all get behind Adam. Larry Summers,
another one,
that Trotskyite economic policies were coming to New York. This is also
Trotskyite.
One thing that I also want to point out about Larry Summers, just so you guys know, and this is a well-documented fact at this point, Larry Summers was in the Epstein files, and he has been to the island. So
okay, remember, wait. And can we also point out how he's using this kind of piece of shit, who, if I'm not mistaken, isn't he also like a Clinton person?
Yes.
Okay, so he's probably a total Kamala person.
He was the Secretary of the Treasury.
All right. Point being, I love that somebody like that is using the term anointment of a candidate. You mean they elected him? I don't understand. Yesterday's New York City anointment. So we use words like that. Words have meanings. And these are the same people that Iran is a regime. Iran is a regime. We're a republic or a government or whatever, but they're a regime. same kind of crap. He was not anointed. He was elected. Cuomo, had he won, would have been anointed because they would have had to cheat to do so. See, that's the thing. That's how it works.
Indeed.
Said that Trotskyite economic policies were coming to New York. There's also a lot of suggestion that Jewish New Yorkers are now unsafe, that a jihadist anti-Semite has taken over, that a communist has taken over, which is what Laura Loomer said.
Oh my God. This dumb bitch.
Would you like to have a moment and describe Laura Loomer?
I can't.
Best so people can understand.
Guys, if we were doing stories, I could have put her in the CUNT club. And I only spell it because it's Congresswomen in urgent need of teaching. And it's this woman belongs there. Again, Laura, do you know the difference between socialism and communism? Do you know what that is? No, I don't think so.
Laura, do you know the difference between a little Botox and way too much Botox?
Well, that's a whole other thing. I don't know why all these people want to look like they're having a centrifugal force situation. But enough with the names, right? It just shows that you're vapid and you have no substance and you really have nothing wrong. So again, I ask you, is he a socialist or is he a communist? And what does his religion have to do with it? You bigot. See, that, again, if it was just the fact that he's a communist, well, then she's just ignorant, right?
Yeah,
but
no,
the fact that he's a
ignorant.
Muslim communist, now you're just also bigot too.
Well, I mean, she is one hell of a bigot if there ever was one. But she, you know what the funniest thing that I can say about Laura Loomer, or Debbie Wasserman Schultz for that matter, Laura Loomer truly believes, Jen, that she is a better looking woman than AOC. Listen, say what you want about Alex, but you could, on your
I can't really see her, but she looks extremely plastic. So she looks the same as Bezos's new wife, who I thought was a porn star. Apparently she was actually a news person.
Well, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
No, I seriously thought she was a porn star.
Yeah, listen, you never know.
She looks like a very aged ex-porn star to me. I'm just saying.
She just looks like the worst stereotypical Jap from the burbs that you could possibly.
And what district is Laura Loomer?
She was trying to run for Congress in Florida's 22nd, I think it was. But basically, you know, Jew heaven, if you will. You know,
so she was not elected? Are you telling?
No, absolutely not. She ran as a Republican in a heavily Democratic district.
Oh, so she can't be in the CUNT club. I thought that she was another one of their bimbo reps.
Well, I mean, she apparently may have gotten it on with Trump. I mean, there is that factor too. So, hey, listen, birds of a feather, birds of a feather.
Jack Posobiec said a
foreign-born Muslim socialist.
Because Zainab, because Laura Loomer mocks people's looks.
Well, no, not that. And it's a matter of, to me, when somebody is like so disingenuous in so many ways that they make that be the issue, then it's the issue. So this is someone, I guess, who said she was way prettier than AOC. Is that what you were saying? Like that she was like, okay. And here's the thing. I mean, you can say a lot of things about Alex, but she's pretty. She's a pretty girl. Yeah. And whatever it is. But the point is that you don't walk around with fake everything and be talking about someone's looks.
Damn right.
Don't.
Jack Posobiec, a guy who I think might be certifiable is the best way I could describe him.
So he's a bigot and ignorant. Oh, this is great.
Oh, yeah. No, this guy.
Foreign-born Muslim.
The other thing about Jack Posobiec is that a lot of people fancy him as someone who could potentially be one who preaches kind of like a stolen valor type of disposition, a guy who acts like he was really in it. Now, he served, I think he was in the Navy, I believe, but the guy tries to talk like he was on like the front lines of combat and things like that. Like that's how he acts. But he's definitely somebody that I question highly in terms of what he's actually been through, if anything. A very dislikable individual, I would say.
Foreign-born Muslim socialist just won the primary. Pro-Israel group Betar said, "We urge all Jews to evacuate New York City."
Now that I would go with, and on behalf of where they would probably come, you're welcome. Continue.
Yeah.
City. Brianna Wu said Democrats are going to get the reputation of socialist terrorist cheerleaders. Gary Kasparov compared Mamdani's socialism to polio. Now, obviously, these are all pretty ridiculous. Unfortunately, this kind of fear-mongering can be successful, but fortunately, the antidote to all of this nonsense is to just have people watch Zohran Mamdani. Because when you see him talk, he's such a good speaker and he so effectively and clearly explains left political ideas that I think it's really hard to take any of this nonsense, any of this bullshit seriously when you just see Zohran Mamdani and you see how sincere and committed he is to his agenda of affordability. So it's really exciting. You should be excited. And you should especially be excited that people like Jonathan Chait and David Frum and Charlie Kirk and Stephen Miller and Elise Stefanik and Laura Loomer are unhappy. Because these are some of the worst people in American politics.
Yes!
And if they're unhappy, then something is going right in this country finally.
Thank you, Nathan. And honestly, that was like the best. I thought he did like a really good little... It was a feel-good piece. It was a real feel-good piece.
I agree. And as I said, I'm not even necessarily concerned right now about Zohran winning the general or even what he will do as mayor, because they will do everything to sabotage him.
Of course.
But the greatest thing about his victory is that it absolutely shatters the illusion of the power of the Israel lobby and what is possible if we collectively work together. Now, granted, it took a mountain of effort for him to win. He also had an opponent that had a lot of flaws, for sure. But the fact that they spent $35 million in a super PAC alone against him and they couldn't win, no matter, we clearly saw one of our most recent viral clips with Norman Finkelstein, how he had all of the different mailers that they were sending out, including ones in Hebrew, because that was really genius, let me tell you. It didn't work. And no matter how bigoted they get, it's clear that it's not working. And that's great.
They sent out mailers in Hebrew to which communities?
Probably the Upper East Side, parts of Brooklyn,
No, because in the Orthodox communities in Brooklyn, they speak Yiddish. They don't speak Hebrew. Everything's in Yiddish there. So that's why I'm curious. That's very interesting. So they put it out in Hebrew. So that's really that's to speak to secular Jews who either are, have made Aliyah, whose family is in Israel, or that's to speak to wealthy white Jews that are secular, because the very, very religious Jews don't speak Hebrew. They speak Yiddish. Just saying. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point.
Tidbit of info.
And do not forget, and I had mentioned this earlier, the tie-ins that exist today when it comes to Israel, and especially because you saw a whole bunch of these anti-Muslim bigots talking about 9/11. Well, does anybody remember Larry Silverstein? Because I do.
I don't. You're going to have to be more specific.
So, I have a little story here, and we're going to play a quick clip.
Story time.
Yes, little story time. So, I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm going to set the mood for everybody. Only 2 months before 9/11, the World Trade Center was privatized and sold to Larry Silverstein.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Every single morning, he ate breakfast in the North Tower on the 91st floor. Keep in mind, the 91st floor was one of the floors that American Airlines Flight 11, or was it? Yes. Was it American?
Doesn't matter. We know what happened.
Flight 11, the first flight,
right.
hit that part of the tower. So, but not on 9/11. His wife made him an emergency doctor's appointment that day.
How fortuitous.
He also conveniently bought an insurance plan that covered terrorism. After the attack, He took the insurance company to court.
Of course he did.
Silverstein won and was paid a whopping $4.55 billion. He is still a free man and is considered a hero of Israel. Here's the clip.
I had the pleasure of working pretty much with every prime minister of Israel, from Yitzhak Shamir forward. I said to myself, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could own the Twin Towers? We got very, very lucky. The governor of New York, George Pataki, decided one day that maybe it would be good to privatize the ownership of the World Trade Center. So I got a call from the governor's office, and they said, would you ever consider owning the World Trade Center? It was very, very good for the family, very good for us. And
he's talking like a mafia boss.
I agree. Completely agree. People that chew gum, and Peter knows that this drives me crazy, because if he's chewing gum in the car and then I get in the car, I will like kind of roll my eyes until he gets rid of the gum. It's gross.
Wait, are you implying that I'm chewing gum?
Sometimes.
But are you saying that he's chewing gum?
Yes, and it's disgusting.
Oh, okay.
And what I'm saying is, when you're doing it by yourself in the car, that's appropriate. Once somebody's in the car is when it gets gross. He's sitting here talking to a whole bunch of people while chewing gum. It's just gross.
Well, the thing that I also want to point out, I mean, listen, you agree that the way he's talking like a mob boss. Like that's kind of how
he looks like Meyer Lansky to me.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Once, like I said, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
When is this from, this video? Do you know?
A number of years ago, I believe. But it was recently discovered.
Because how old is this guy now, or is he dead now?
I believe he's still alive. I'm pretty sure. Guys, I want to continue this video, but if you can confirm if Larry Silverstein is still alive, because clearly he's an old man here, and I can't say for certain how far back it goes.
Right, that's why I'm curious. Like maybe that's why this is now coming out. I don't know.
It's possible.
We were very, very fortunate. On the morning of 9/11,
who in the hell blinks like that? My God, it's like someone said he's a lizard person, confirmed. Lizards live a long time.
That's true, and they shed skin. It's like,
have you seen Debbie? It looks like she's bulging out of her skin every so often.
She is very, very like lizard-like.
Lizard-like, yeah.
She's very reptilian.
Yeah, it's Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, 100% lizard person, confirmed. He is still alive, and he is 94 years old. It's almost like Don Cicci at the end of The Godfather Part 2. Vito Corleone has to go back to Sicily and take care of business.
So why is this coming out now, though?
I'm not sure, but it came out.
I'm getting ready, getting dressed to go to the dermatologist. I have light-colored hair, light skin. The sun is a disaster for me.
Yeah, because you're not a fucking Semite.
Yeah, shouldn't be living in the Middle East.
That should be the hint to you.
But you're going to the dermatologist, you're going this morning, and you're not going downtown. We got very, very lucky. And I had an obligation to collect the insurance proceeds from the policies. A new governor was just elected. Elliot Spitzer, an old friend who I knew well.
Of course.
I said, Elliot, if you don't help me, I'll never collect from the insurance companies. And guess what? He listened, And he said, you know what? You're entitled. I'm going to get you the money. And in 6 months, he got me the $4.5 billion. We got very, very lucky.
Yeah, I'm sure it was very lucky. As if people like that rely on luck. Yeah, that makes sense.
Not a chance.
Can I please, another person that, and again, too late in life, like, because he's at 94, it's like, you know, he's already like enjoyed his whole life. But these are people that I really think need to learn Mangione monetary theory. That's what I think.
That would be a great question, Day Day.
That's very, yeah, maybe. And maybe that's why whatever was, whatever the recent batch or recently released batch of information might have had something to do with that. But yeah, some stuff definitely has come out, because I saw there was firefighters, New York firefighters, that were talking about the controlled demolition, and that they actually have, that there was the voice on the phone of a fire chief that was up on the floor of impact and very casually was like, yeah, there's 2 fires. We've got it. No problem. And then it was a complete control collapse. So there was this stuff. I just saw something about this recently. So maybe that's what it is, this information that was released.
Well, that's, whether you believe it was a controlled demolition or not, the one thing that has never been answered that people will still refuse to talk about is Building 7 and why that collapsed.
That's in this too. But again, that's what I'm saying. There was this piece of information that's a communication, an audio communication between firefighters. Okay. They don't lie. They just don't. They're not going to stand in a situation and make shit up. That's just not so that's why I think it was so unusual, is that there's this communication at the time where they were, that I think that we need to look further into that.
And that was my aha moment when I was still 19, 20 years old. I just said, as soon as I discovered that there was a massive stock sell-off of both American and United Airlines stock on Friday, September 7th, there was just something, you can't make that up. And then on Monday, September 10th, you have Rumsfeld in front of the House Select Committee saying we have $2 trillion in unaccounted money from the Pentagon. And then 9/11 happens. These things are just not coincidental, guys.
No.
And as I've often said, remember, West Point is only, 25, 30 miles from downtown Manhattan. You mean to tell me that the second that FAA announces that there are hijacked airplanes from Logan and Newark Airport, and a couple of them are rerouting towards Manhattan, you're telling me that the F-35 fighter jets out of West Point wouldn't have been able to get in the air? They can get in the air in like less than 10 minutes. So the idea that they could not have stopped this, especially the second plane, you want to tell me that there is some possibility that one of the 2 planes, especially the North Tower plane, was able to get to its destination? Maybe I can buy that. The idea that there was almost a 20-minute gap between the first plane hitting and the second plane, that the F-35 fighter jets would not have intercepted that plane, it's not possible. It's just,
what about the plane into the Pentagon?
You can't even see that it's a plane. It looks like
here's
a
the thing:
missile.
it incinerated metal that can't be incinerated, disappeared everything except for a passport. The passport of the pilot, the passport was fine. But there's a lot of very odd things. I thought so then. I think so now. I'm not, kooky. Well, at least not about that.
Could you imagine an insurance claim by a Zio leader?
Yes.
All these years later, that none of it was ever mentioned in the news, that a guy who actually took over the World Trade Center within a couple of months after securing a terrorist insurance policy within a couple of months.
Yeah. Crazy.
And he gets $4.5 billion. I mean, it's not a conspiracy. It's just not anymore. Now, our channel's going to get shut down as a result of this conversation.
We're always prepared for that. So if that happens, guys, remember, you can always support us on Patreon.
Make sure to get over to Patreon. We're going to have to build a channel through Rumble. That's going to be the next move.
And we also have a merch store now. So, guys, I looked in today. I noticed that our Feel Enraged, Get Engaged stuff is up. It's just... I was inspired by the Rage Meter. So all of any money, anything that comes in from that, I'm sending to Heal Palestine. I just want to keep them on everybody's radar. So if you're not familiar, Heal Palestine organization, it's just like the smallest piece of like joy, honestly, that I've had in anything having to do with anything. So they help children that are coming from Gaza, specifically Gaza, and coming here for medical treatment and mental health treatment. And they're having a summer camp right now that is staffed by doctors and therapists and all these people. And all these kids are able to like do kid things in a safe place. And so, yeah, Heal Palestine, it's the only remotely pleasant thing in any of this. So,
S. Kolachuk with the 5 Canadian A. Thank you very much. Nathan J. Robinson fired most of the staff of Current Affairs magazine in 2021 after they attempted to organize a workers' co-op.
I remember that.
Yes, he did. Now, I am not here to defend him, and I'm not going to. But what I will say is that when you have a small organization, and depending on now, again, I don't remember if it was a worker co-op or if it was a union that they were trying to form. But either way, you have to consider how much revenue did the place actually have? What was the bandwidth? Look, Nathan tried to explain the situation. We could probably get him on the podcast, and I would imagine.
Here's the thing. If we show a clip of somebody, whether it's Nathan, whether it's Joe Rogan, whether it's whatever, anybody, right? It's because we're aware that that's what other people might be watching, or we think they do a good job in this particular clip of explaining something. And I will always give props where props are due. And if something amuses me, and that in particular is, that was just something I was sending you, but I did think he did a really good job of pulling both the bipartisan hate together.
Speaking of sharing information from somebody who you may not necessarily agree with, Theo Vaughn has built himself a tremendous podcast platform. And yes, the fact that he had Trump on definitely accelerated his growth to an exponentially high level. The fact that he is friends with Rogan has also helped him grow exponentially. But I got to tell you,
I never heard of him till like that clip you showed a few weeks ago, or whenever that was.
He is a good dude. He has a lot of good, and listen, not everybody's going to agree on everything politically. You have to accept that reality.
But is he a comedian? Is that what it is? He's a comedian? Okay.
He is a comedian.
He's a comedian with a podcast.
Yes, and a very good one, I might add. And so who did he speak with the other day? Perhaps the best congressional representative we have in the U.S. right now.
I feel like Israel is a fair ally. Are they a good ally for us?
Well,
or is that too general of a question?
Well, I think it doesn't matter. Like, there's no big, giant, Great Britain lobby. There's no Australian lobby. There's no German lobby.
Oh, the other countries don't have them?
No, not like this. This is singular. This is unique. I mean, if you're an ally, why wouldn't we work with you? Why do you have to convince us that you're our ally? Why do you have to basically go into every congressional office and convince them? And it's because they want to keep the money flowing.
I mean, isn't that everything, guys?
It's a really good response. If they're your ally, why are they there? And no other country has that. Can you imagine if there was the American Chinese Public Affairs Committee? Are you kidding me? Oh my God. And it's just true. There's no other country has that. What they have are called embassies and diplomats and liaisons and different people that represent those countries. We have that, but they don't have full-scale lobbying organizations at the multi-billion-dollar level that they own everything. That's just not a thing.
Exactly. And that's why Massie, and I tell you, the big difference, Jen, between Massie and Rand Paul, Massie has, with all due respect to Rand Paul, Massie has real dynamic personality. He is
he is looking fine, and I know that there will be moments when I hate on him for whatever it is that he's doing.
Sure,
but he and I are not on the same page in a lot of ways. That's for sure.
But you know what? He's not dirty, and to me, in the day and age that we're living in today, we need to be supporting individual leaders, because that's what Thomas Massie really is. He's not a politician. He's a leader, because he actually goes against the grain. You saw the graphic that they put up of him with AOC, Ilhan, and Rashida. I know. It's like he is, when somebody does that, then you know for sure he's doing the right thing.
But what's so beautiful about it, and you could tell everything about him, and this is why I like him, he has zero fucks to give.
He really does. And listen, as sad as it is to say, but him losing his wife, who I believe was either his college or even high school sweetheart. I mean, he's in a whole other world now. It's like he's been reborn or something, where he's just like, okay, I've crossed the bridge where I'm just never going to question.
But I appreciate, and the other thing is he's consistent. He's consistent.
As consistent as anybody in politics. He's more consistent on Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people than Bernie and AOC are.
And they've got a good return on their investment. I mean, we send more foreign aid to Israel than to any other country.
Yeah.
They're, like 10 million people or something.
Yeah, I think
Tennessee, I don't know the population in Tennessee, but it's probably about, on that order.
Yeah, I think this year they said we spent like $12 billion, but that's not actual dollars. It's in military aid, right?
Yeah, it's it's dollars
like
that comes out of the Treasury. Yeah, but it's not like we give them. It's a gift certificate that's redeemable at Lockheed Martin and your local Raytheon.
That's what people don't understand when they talk about us giving money, that our tax dollars are going to Israel. Well, we know it's not our tax dollars. Tax dollars don't fund spending. But more importantly, most of what you're thinking of in terms of where the money is going to shareholders of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Boeing and Northrop and whoever, right? And Palantir. And so that's where the money is going. He's on fire now.
Okay, got it. So that's kind of how that works.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Why do they have this carve out that's just for them? Like what do we get from Israel, do you feel like?
Headache.
We got a lot of countries that hate us.
How can you not like that? How can you not like that? How can you not? So endearing.
And the other problem is that you really don't have anybody else except maybe Rashida Tlaib who would just come outright and say the exact
Nobody says
thing.
this. Yeah.
Like that is the gift.
Got a lot of countries that hate us.
Yeah. I mean, as direct and as clear as you could possibly be.
It's one of the things we get.
Well, especially right now with this stuff in Gaza, I think it's Israel's. It's one of the worst PR campaigns I've ever seen in my life. If they're even, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, I just don't, it gives their government this extremely evil look to me, and I think to a lot of people,
Well, rough numbers, there are 2 million people in Gaza and 50,000 have been killed.
He's off there. We'll get it. We could get into that at another point. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's way off. But even 50, but you see, here's the thing. The difference with somebody like Thomas Massie versus, let's say, a Zionist, Thomas Massie is talking about 50,000 people that should be alive. Whereas a Zionist defender of Israel and its actions would say something along the lines of, it's only 50,000. Stop saying it's 400,000.
Again, and I still find that upset. If it were, here's the thing. If it were 50,000 Israelis, can you fathom? Fathom. Because all they focus on is what they accuse are 1,200, which we also know is a bullshit number. So, you know, the numbers are just show you the the difference between what one Israeli life is worth. I think it's like 1 to 1,500.
Yeah, it's some ridiculous
Palestinians.
Same number. But Grammy also, if many people don't know this, Thomas Massie by every metric, is the most green politician in all of Congress. That's quite a feat for somebody who apparently is super conservative, right-leaning bullshit. So let's just stick with the facts.
It's 2.5%. Like, they've killed 1 in 40 people in Gaza. If you did that in the United States, if you did 2.5% of 350 million, it'd be almost 10 million people dead in the United States. Everybody in Gaza is at this point related to somebody who's been killed. Like,
can you believe that?
I can't believe he's saying it. And this will forever, like, this is why I can see him leading a segment, leading a segment of the Republican Party where it does split with the neocon evangelicals and the libertarians and people like him splitting. And I could see him being somebody that a lot of people that are anti-war people would support. And that's where I think we could potentially have this is the movement, like that could be it.
Yeah, there's going to be ones like I said, I hope Clint Russell runs for Congress against Randy Fine. And we will support Clint if he does.
Yeah, Wanker Tanker, he is a Republican. And again, there are many, many things where I would not agree with him. But the thing about him not being corporate is that he's reasonable. So as of right now, he represents a conservative district. And if you represent a conservative district, then you should represent them in a conservative fashion. And I have no problem with that, right? That's why I like him. I have respect. But in terms of, I think he'd be a reasonable person to work with, being that he's consistent and does things based on science and facts.
Agreed.
At least a first cousin you had killed. And then if you say how many have been maimed, it's probably 3 or 4 times that. So everybody in Gaza knows people who've been killed and maimed.
And we're supporting it, right? That's also the part that makes it really tough sometimes to just be a person. It's like, our tax money is going towards this, but I just hope that people in some of these other countries know that.
We need to get Steve on with this guy like ASAP. This guy needs to, because it drives me crazy when people with really big platforms, guys, tax dollars don't fund spending. That's not how it works. Stop saying it. Words matter.
And Massie's guilty of it too.
I know.
But you know what?
He needs an MMT education.
But just about every last one of them is. Now, if you want to say that that our spending in America is out of control, I would agree with you. But if you're going to say it right. Don't say that it's the taxpayers' money, so we have to cut all the taxes. No, the government spends the money and they get taxed. You know what the dirty little secret is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the rich avoid all taxes at all times as much as possible, and it makes it impossible for us to live. That's it. We live in a country where everything is upside down, and especially now.
It's not regular everyday people who would want to do these things, that it's like government's making these choices and it's corporate interests that make these choices. How would we stop it? Well, do we need this connection with Israel? What is it? No one ever explains what it's for, I feel like, right? That would help everybody have a much better understanding, because it starts to feel like America is just a shell company, an LLC for Israel. That's what it starts to feel like a lot of times, Do you feel like that's realistic, or do you feel like that's off base?
I wouldn't send him a dime. Like, that's my position. I don't think whatever we're getting isn't worth it.
Thank you. There's also a comment I want to address because I think this is good. Francesca Albanese said the Israeli response on October 7th was perfectly justifiable. It's their actions from October 9th on we need to question. Let me be clear about Francesca. She's a hero. She is one of the most amazing people that I've ever watched. Like, I definitely have like girl crush on her. So I'm going to put that out there right there. I think she's brilliant. I think that she is calm and graceful and beautiful and handles shit in a way that I don't feel like I am not that graceful. So let me say this. While Francesca, being that she is a legal scholar, brilliant person, and in her capacity as a legal person needs to stay within guidelines and maybe still give grace in certain areas, I don't. And I knew on October 7th that this would happen exactly like this. that they would take it to another level. Did I envision seeing what I've seen? No, because I never had even nightmares like that. But she gives way more grace than me. But you're right. You're right. Technically, she is right.
Which is also why a lot of people suspect, and rightfully so, that October 7th, like 9/11, was predetermined, especially by Netanyahu. I don't think that we are breaking any substantial news here. I think it is very fair to say that that is the order of the day. The actions suggest, especially since it is well documented that Netanyahu and his government have been funding Hamas forever, that perhaps they wanted something like this to happen, whether because they are seeking an opportunity to completely genocide the region so that they can make it an apartheid state.
Correct.
Officially.
This was always the plan. Gaza was the low-hanging fruit. Then you've got Lebanon, Syria, Iran. It goes like that. And by the way, just so you know, before we get off of the Francesca, because she's getting love in the comment section, like if you were ever to like surprise me with a good guest, she would be one. Like that would be someone who would be like an off the charts person.
Fair enough.
And I would, and for someone like that, I would go at any time. I don't know where she is. I think she's in London. Sorry.
No, I believe you're right. I think she's in London. She's Italian by way of the UK, I believe.
Right. I think she's in the UK. Yeah. Anyhow.
So we want to close with a very important, I think, sort of neglected issue here that we have lost sight of in many ways.
Yes.
If you guys are not familiar with Vino Mom, she has a great Instagram account, and she is uncovering a lot of the domestic side of the corporate special interests breakdown of our very system. And I'm sure many of you at a time or another are familiar with the now bankrupt Chapter 11 company, Quiznos. Quiznos was supposed to be Subway's competition in terms of a national sandwich chain. And for a while, they were pretty successful. But then, of course, like many others, they get taken over by private equity, and we all know what happens. But little did anybody know how bad this was actually going to get, because a lot of you are probably familiar with Smashburger. But did you know that the same people that own Smashburger are the same people that own Quiznos? Bet you didn't know that one. Here we go.
I'm on my way to the airport, and I wanted to take a moment to pull over and show you how this company exploited 4,700 small business owners into bankruptcy and then ran with all of their cash and was able to get out of any liability in their bankruptcy proceedings and in the legal battles that followed, walking away clean and getting rich off of their suffering. Now,
wait, for people who are listening or can't see or whatever, she's talking about Smashburger. I'm just pointing that out because there are people listening. She's pointing to
Smashburger it's Five Guys, it's In and Out. It's basically the same thing.
Whatever. And also because she's doing it selfie, it is hard to read that it's Smashburger, but it is Smashburger.
But I've never watched any of my videos on Quiznos. It was a brand that was the fastest growing sandwich chain in the world in the early aughts.
Started in Colorado when I was in college.
They started getting greedy and pitting stores against each other on 2 and 3 corners of the same intersection. Because if one store was doing well and making money, they decided that wasn't fair, and they could get more money out of the community if there was another store across the street. So literally, they started to cannibalize one another. And when the stores started failing, what they did was this private equity firm said, I know what we'll do. We'll find a way to make money off them, even if they're not making money because they're competing with each other. And they offered each of them this new fancy marketing initiative that was going to save them so much money and give them new customers. They got them all to sign their contracts. And when they signed those contracts, it said they were getting a new food distributor that was going to save them money, but they had to sign an exclusivity contract. Each owner gladly did because they were losing money en masse. So they signed these contracts saying they were getting a new unified distributor that was going to save them money through an economy of scale. Almost immediately, their food prices dropped as they were first entering the new supply chain. But what nobody told them was that Quiznos owned the new food distributor, and they never told the ownership that. And as soon as everybody signed their name on the dotted line and had nowhere else they were allowed to buy food, they started hiking the prices exponentially as royalties from real sales was going down because of the oversaturated market.
key little caveat here that also I think needs to be pointed out.
Oh my God.
As I am in commercial real estate, remember, the most important thing to private equity is not the business and not the employees. It's the real estate that business sits on. So keep in mind, when you look at all of these strip centers, for example, that you pass by on a daily basis, those businesses that are in those strip centers, they don't have any ounce of ownership for the most part. I mean, there's always exceptions depending on who owns the actual strip center. But overall, the strip center is owned by an investor of some kind. And in many instances, especially the much bigger strip centers, they're owned by private equity. They're owned by REITs, which are real estate investment organizations. And it's called a real estate investment trust that's the acronym for it. But remember that for them, when it comes to these small business owners, these employees, they don't give a flying fuck about any of them. It is all a means to an end, which is why a company that goes belly up like Quiznos and the ones who own it in the private equity world, they're like, okay, well, we'll just come up with another one and we'll rinse and repeat the same thing. The whole concept of golden parachutes, that's where this comes from. And that's why this is happening. So this is why I can't emphasize enough that if you can shop small and buy local, that is what you should do every single time. Because anytime, and I mean anytime, you walk into any national chain, chances are you're walking into a place where you're giving money to private equity. That's what you're doing.
And so there came very quickly a point around 2007 where Quiznos, the brand, was making more off of the exploitative kickback schemes at this food distributor in what's called rebate revenue than they were on the actual royalties based on the success of the stores. And 4,700 Quiznos locations started to fail one after another and go into bankruptcy. These people lost everything. They lost their retirements, their homes, their future, their college funds. And Quiznos engaged in something called the Texas two-step. You see, right before they realized that all of the dominoes were about to fall, they quickly offshored all of their debt into the LLC that stayed there, while they offshored all of their assets and their intellectual property into a separate LLC they sold to it for a small sum, maybe even $1. And they kept that new LLC with the original CEO. So that the old LLC that all of these people had their contracts with had only debt and no assets, so that the company could file bankruptcy and get out clean, while the CEO took all of the money that'd been made off of all of them to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars a year, and he walked away and founded Smashburger. And that is how the company Smashburger was built, off of the blood, sweat, and tears of more than 4,700 small families that wanted to start small businesses to enter the entrepreneurial class and build a life for themselves, to make money on their own and have freedom. And instead ended up being exploited by the first private equity firm that learned how to exploit their franchisees through kickbacks. And they walked away clean and built a new legacy where they continue to exploit their franchisees. But they didn't end up bankrupting quite as many. They do still have a terrible success rate, though. Don't eat at Smashburger. Don't eat at Quiznos. And stop supporting private equity-owned franchises. If you're new here, my name.
Yes. And it's good to know that now, personally, I've never eaten at a Smashburger. I've not had that. I don't know where. I've seen them. We have them here. I mean, but it's fairly new here, so I don't know where they're based. I mean, obviously, it's new since Quiznos. Quiznos started in Denver, and I was in college there in Boulder, and the second one opened in Boulder, and it was just a private, it was a family thing. It wasn't a thing, and it was so good. And then they started doing good and opening, and then it all went badly.
It went straight to hell. And it didn't make any sense either, because I used to eat at Quiznos back in the day, and I thought Quiznos was good.
Yes.
I thought they made a good product. But when you get private equity involved, the only thing that matters is the bottom line. Quality doesn't mean anything. In fact, that's how quality gets diluted. It's the same reason why
I most certainly am a Buffalo. You know, it's always about where Peter went. You know, Peter went to Rutgers. He has to tell everybody he went to Rutgers. I did go to the University of Colorado. And so, yes, I am a Golden Buffalo.
A smash burger is basically just like, I think it's like a flattened patty. I think that's like, there's like a technical term for it or something. But private equity led by BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard have completely destroyed this country. Completely. You don't get to have trillions in assets unless you're exploiting working people. There's no other way to do it. That's how it happens. So when everyone's wondering why things are so bad, you need look no further, as we've said. So when you get yahoos in the chat who like to say, oh, you guys support RFK, the only reason we said favorable things about RFK is because he's the only person with a large platform in the last several years that actually said that private equity is what is destroying this country. Why is he the only person who says that when everybody else should be saying it? It's the same thing with Bernie and AOC. You want people like that to be the so-called leaders of the progressive movement? You're no fucking leader if you're not speaking out against private equity and what that's doing to our country. You can't have somebody like Bobby, who's got his own problems, having to go out there and say what needs to be said. Sometimes it's the right message with the wrong messenger. We may not have the largest platform in the world, but what we do have is the ability to get the message out there. And what we're very fortunate to have now is every other day, you know, we are getting clips that are doing numbers, which is fantastic. And, you know, now we gained another 1,000 subscribers in the last 24 hours. I mean, it's a completely different world now that our channel is in, and we will forever be grateful for it. Colin, I wanted to do a quick poll with the chat, but I think it's safe to say that Saturday night is definitely going to be a primary night. I'm wondering if you guys think it would make more sense for us to do our call-in show on Monday or Thursday. If you think one of the two nights.
Well, what were the numbers basically the same? Like, I think they might have been better on Monday.
Well, keep in mind, Monday we did have Norman Finkelstein.
There's that, but also it really depends on who else is live when we're live. And I don't know other people's consistent schedules. And that's what I'm saying.
Well, suggestions are certainly welcome, guys, if you would like to make them. If you think that going on Monday to do a live with call-in or Thursday would make more sense. Anybody who is a paying member of our channel, whether as a YouTube member or a patron, you will have the ability to call in.
Correct.
And have a conversation.
Everybody can watch.
Yes.
But only members will be able to actually call in. But yeah, that's the plan.
Everybody will be able to watch. It's not a private members only thing. This is for everybody to watch. But if you are a paying member, you will have the ability to call in. So we hope that you will. It'll make for a fun conversation. And Shama is coming on Monday. Again, we're preparing for the future.
Yeah, right now, everybody that we have booked right now, it is how it is. But you know, going forward, like there's certain.
It's not a career. This is not a career.
No.
We're not doing that.
No.
The fact that we've even added a third is a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
So, but what? Now you made me lose my train of thought. Okay, so with the rebrand, like we're still kind of like going and seeing how it's working. I'm not sure how it is, Colin. What is it?
Colin, can you explain exactly like what the format would be like and how this would work?
Call in, yeah.
There it is. Yeah, essentially, it's not quite like a Zoom call, but if you guys have it's similar to Zoom, yeah, where basically everyone would be muted in the background with just Peter and Jen talking, and you guys, there's a feature to basically put people in a line when they raise their hand to talk, and so whoever does it first is queued first. You come in and ask a question,
yeah,
and then they either discuss or can boot you off right after that to discuss the question, and yeah, it'd be nice and
it's
clean.
live though, right? Like, so we're still live
Yes.
to whoever's watching. Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's cool. Okay, so that's how it works. but it's your audio. You're not, people aren't video. At least that's how I've seen Jordan do it.
It can be either. The way Jordan does is for anyone to call in through an actual phone number, but through the benefit of members is you have the option for audio or video, depending on who's calling in, what they prefer as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's cool. All right. I like that. We could do that. So what I was going to say is we're satisfying every obligation, but like going forward, for example, I like the idea of having a 7:00 show start time and a guest coming on at 8. I liked how it went Monday, even though that's not normally how we do it, but we did it that way. And I thought it was good. Like, I prefer that than feeling like, okay, we're just getting sort of in a groove and then we have a guest come on. I don't know. I liked it better. So things like that, I think we're going to switch.
Craig, there were a number of things that RFK talked about that was good, including red dye, including how our food has been poisoned. But much like we said earlier at the top, RFK is compromised by Israel. And there is simply no excuse for that. There is no defense of that. And there is no redeeming quality of that. And so as a result, I will not, and we will not platform him for that purpose. You throw everything that you're fighting for that is just and good away because of your kowtowing to the Israel lobby. And that's it. And that's the attitude that everybody has to have.
Yes, Harashnu, the call-in show, we were just talking about doing call-in show. Everybody will be able to watch it live. It's just that people that are members will be able to call in. So everybody will be able to watch. It's not.
And that's what we're going to do, Kay. It will be callers one at a time, and everybody can listen, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
But we're not sure when. And again, I'm not necessarily convinced that it needs to be the same. You know what I'm saying? I think it could be like, for example, if we have a good guest that's available on a Thursday, then we would do it on a Monday or what. I don't know. I just think that we don't necessarily have to. We could have it that one night a week is a call-in show. It doesn't always have to be the same. That's my point. It could be guest dependent.
Teresa is on fire tonight. She has given us 10 total.
Oh, that's so awesome.
10 generational change.
Thank you.
You are super awesome and one of our favorites. And you better call in, Teresa.
Yeah, that I like when the people that we know call in.
Yes, I would hope that you would.
I would like that, yeah.
Travers, you've got to call in. We have to hear your voice. It's absolutely necessary unless you're going to sound like the Lucky Charms guy. Any of our amazing supporters that are here, we really appreciate it.
Jessica, I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't call in and go after people like that. It's not my vibe. I don't even like the idea of debating because the majority of stuff that people want to debate to me are just not debatable.
Yeah, unfortunately, people that don't deal in reason are the ones that you really can't have those conversations with.
That's why it's like what people want is like the drama and the theater, and they like somebody sort of being taken down, but it'll never be framed that way. There's always the bias and who thinks who wins what just based on who you liked beforehand. I don't know. And also the stuff that they want to technically debate are not debatable. I'm not debating about Israel. I'm not debating about, whether or not single parent healthcare. I'm not debating about access and reproductive lady parts. Exactly.
Yeah,
like I'm just not. These are not debatable things. So that's the problem.
But I would like to think that you guys would have some good topics to discuss, and it'll be fun. We'll see how it goes. So we're looking forward to it. So with that said, smash that like button, share, subscribe if you're new. Do all those things that we ask you to do. Remember, Saturday night, old friend of the show, India Walton, who should be the mayor of Buffalo right now, is going to come on and share her thoughts as to what Zohran needs to avoid in New York to not have the same fate.
Yes.
So with that said, we appreciate you all. Thank you so very much for your support. We'll see you Saturday. And Jen?
Free Palestine.
Good night.